start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Item 3, roll call. Council members ex officio EMID Director Stacy Jimenez.
I'm here.
Susie Niederhofer.
Present.
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Phoebe Venkat.
Here.
And Mayor President Art Kiesel.
Here. Next item.
Item 4, special presentations. 4.1, a proclamation recognizing February 2026 as Black History Month.
Okay, this is a proclamation of the City of Foster City recognizing February 2026 as Black History Month. Whereas this month we pay homage to the rich history and contributions of African Americans who have shaped our nation in innumerable ways. Black History Month rightfully centers and the struggles and triumphs of African Americans to tell a fuller story of the American and the diverse communities that built it. And whereas in 2026, the theme for Black History Month is a century of Black history commemorations. It urges us to explore the impact and meaning of Black history and life commemorations in transforming the status of Black peoples in the modern world. And whereas, along with writing Black histories, antebellum Black scholars north of slavery started observing the milestones in the struggle of people of African descent to gain their freedom and equality. And whereas to understand the modern world, especially nations where Black peoples form a significant population, one must grapple with the impact that the public observances have had on the past and the present. And whereas Dr. Carter G. Woodson, founder of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, sought to turn the ceremonious more forthcoming into far-reaching, organized, and sustained effort, and to transform how Black people viewed themselves and how the world viewed them. And whereas on February 10th, 1976, during the United States bicentennial, President Gerald R. Ford became the first president to issue a message recognizing Black History Month. Then in 1986, Congress passed Public Law 99-244, designating February as Black History Month. These efforts have made February the month when Black history finds its way, not simply into the schools of the American nation, but also into cultural heritage sites, public squares, workplaces, houses of worship, and homes in the land across the oceans. And whereas Black history's value is not its contribution to mainstream historical narratives, but its resonance in the lives of the Black people. Now, therefore, I, Art Kiesel, on behalf of the City Council, do officially recognize February 2026 as Black History Month, honor the great and necessary work that Black Americans who have and continue to improve our country, state, and city, and encourage all residents to celebrate, learn, and respect Black heritage and culture while maintaining efforts to create a more just, peaceful, and prosperous world for all. Want to speak? And I got one P.S.
I'll yield to you.
I have one P.S. to that. Last time you were here, you were worried about the elevator, and so I'm hoping that the elevator works this year.
She made me write this down because she says I always forget things. Mayor, member of the City Council, staff, and the community looking at large. I am truly honored and deeply grateful to be here tonight to participate in this recognition of Black History Month. Thank you for the meaningful acknowledgement and taking the time to uplift the importance of this moment. Black history is American history. What makes this recognition especially meaningful is that it comes from you who represent the community. Change and progress doesn't happen only at the national level. It can happen right here in Foster City, where people choose to acknowledge one another, celebrate diversity, and create space where everyone is valued. Again, thank you for this honor and for your leadership and for your commitment to inclusion and recognition. It truly means a lot to me. I could never put it into words. Thank you.
Good evening, and Mayor Kiesel, thank you. City Council, staff, on behalf of the NAACP, who was also sharing 100 years here in San Mateo County, we thank you. We thank you for your leadership. We thank you for the acknowledgement of not just Black history, but American history, as it was already stated. We also want to make sure that we understand wide and broad that the role that Foster City plays in Black history. And if you don't know, ask someone about the history and the beginning of Foster City and the role it played for African Americans here in this country. So, and I'd also like to say, as we reflect on the life of Jesse Jackson, that we think about the work that we all do, why we do the work, why it matters, and it's always the right time to do the right thing, and we should always, in Reverend Jesse Jackson's saying, say, keep hope alive. Thank you so much for your acknowledgement. Thank you for all the work that you're doing for the residents of Foster City. Thank you for the work that this city has, the role that this city has played in Black history. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, we photo op time. Next item, please.
Are we able to give any remarks?
Pardon?
Are we
Oh,
able
you want to
give
make
any-
this comment?
Yeah, if
Okay,
it's
go.
possible. Actually, it's great timing because it built off of what NAACP President Goodman was mentioning, the history of Foster City. I'm not going to encapsulate it all in one, but I'm a history nerd. But our Black community members have played a pivotal role in Foster City's history. They were the pioneers suburbanites. Now, very different kind of pioneer, but they helped shape the city's civic identity during a critical transition from when Foster City was founded as a private developer-run district to a self-governing incorporated city in the 60s and 70s. This would not have been possible without the strength, intelligence, just the community focus that the Black community members have. So I just wanted to kind of just add that And this is why, part of the reason why Foster City is flourishing today is because we had so much emotional and intelligent investment from our Black community. Thank you.
Patrick?
Yeah, and I want to thank you guys for being present here. And as I mentioned, Foster City Unincorporated did not have in their CC&Rs the discrimination that every other city did. And I was also honored 12 years ago to meet Jesse Jackson at an Apple stockholders meeting, so it was a little unusual meeting, but I did have an opportunity. So, God rest his soul. Thank you.
Anyone? Okay, next item.
Item 5, public. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items not listed on the agenda. Anyone who wants to provide public comment in person, please fill out a yellow speaker slip as soon as possible and hand it to me. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment via Zoom, please raise your hand during this time. We will take in-person speakers first, followed by those on Zoom. And I do not have any speaker slips and there are no raised hands on Zoom.
And nobody's on it. Okay, thank you. Next item.
Item 6, City EMID Consent Calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council EMID Board of Directors and will be enacted by one motion unless removed by a member of the Council Board, staff, or public. Anyone who wants to provide public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Okay, does anybody want to pull anything?
Yeah, through the mayor, I'd like to pull 6.2 and 6.4. Item 6.2 and item 6.4.
6.2 and 6.4. Okay, anyone else? All right, any public comment on the remainder of this consent calendar?
We have one raised hand, Pablo.
None?
We have one raised hand.
Oh, okay. Please.
Hi. I want to talk about 6.2, but are you going to discuss that first?
I missed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, they will be discussing 6.2.
He wants
So
6.2?
Should I make the comment now or
No, you would hold off. Okay, I'm looking, there's no others?
No other
No other
commenters.
comments?
No other commenters.
Okay, so 6.2 is called, we'll address that separately. So I'm looking for a motion on the remainder of the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion on the remainder of the consent calendar, items 6.1, 6.3, and 6.5 for approval.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, 6.2.
Item 6.2, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Foster City authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Flock Safety LLC for the procurement of 8 additional automatic license plate readers, ALPRs, for $24,000 annually to be used in a manner consistent with the city's established ALPR program and other applicable law. Anyone who wants to provide public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Okay,
Yeah, so I just had two questions.
too much?
Two questions of
Okay.
our chief. So the first, I think I am in favor of these. I've seen the good work that they've done so far, but I was hoping maybe you could explain why the positioning of these cameras the particular positions were chosen.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. So the recommended positioning for the additional 8 cameras was determined based on the more busy areas that we have in the city involving crime. Also, main thoroughfares. So initially, we focused on entry-exit into the city, the perimeter of the city, basically. And that's worked out beautifully so far. It's really important to know when people enter the city, but a challenge there is once they're in the city, then where do people go? So these additional cameras are one more way that we may capture locations of people as they travel through the interior spaces of our city, which will help direct our officers into the appropriate vicinity to hopefully locate the vehicle. So those are the 2 main points. It's an attempt to direct our officers, and it's focused on areas that we've identified as being most involved in criminal activity and ways in and out of the city as well.
And then I think that's helpful. My next question is regarding just what happens with the data once it's captured. Are we sharing it? How, when other agencies want to access our data, can you walk me through that process?
Sure, and I don't know, I think we may be joined by a flock representative. I don't know if she is present virtually.
Hi, I'm here. This is Lily Ho. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Flock Safety.
Hi, Lily. So I'll start that portion of the conversation. So what do we do with the information? The cameras detect vehicle information, so the vehicle itself, including the make, the model, the style of the vehicle, the license plate information. And nothing is done with that information unless it is searched for. It is recorded, making it available to us for investigative purposes. Aside from that, regarding sharing of the information, so we require here in this city, not every city does it, but we have a letter that we require other cities, other agencies to sign saying that they will search responsibly when they search our flock system, and that they will search for the right reasons, and such as immigration. We're not going to accept that. Unless they sign that data acknowledgement letter, we don't allow them to access our system. And Lily, if you can expand on the information, please.
Sure. Typically, searches are only done if a vehicle is involved in a crime. And optionally required is a search reason. And the search reasons are all search reasons that are part of the NEBRIS, typical of what investigators would use, or police departments and law enforcement agencies would consider a crime. Along that would require a case number. I'm not certain if this is the case or not for Foster City specifically, but it can be made a requirement. If a vehicle is not part of a crime to be searched, nothing is done with that information, and it would be automatically deleted after a certain number of days, as long as the retention period for Foster City.
Right, so unless we have that authorization completed, we don't share the information. And if we do share, it's for the appropriate reasons.
Do we have the ability to deny requests even if they do sign the letter? For example, could we say we don't allow ICE agents to access our data?
Absolutely. First of all, we don't share with any federal agencies. But to answer that question directly, we do have full control of our system. So even if it's an agency that we have shared with for the last year, we can remove that access to our system at any time.
Do we then as a council need to look maybe at a future date as to tightening up those parameters, or is that something that happens on your end? What do we need to do to make sure that we have an updated?
At this time, it does happen on our end. And just to note, we did do a full inspection of our system, I believe last week, with one of our captains and a flock representative to confirm, which it was confirmed, that everything is set as it should be. So there is no authority granted or access given to our system that shouldn't be there.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Just to follow up on that.
Question, Dren.
Yeah. As I understand, the police department also does audits of the information to make sure that there are no breaches or unauthorizations, stuff like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that is done annually or semi-annually? Or
Right. So we do an outside agency audit annually, and then we do an internal audit every 6 months.
okay, great, thank you.
Any question? Oh, Patrick.
Yeah, I know the first time we did it, what is our storage capability and how long do we keep that data?
So the storage capability is on the side of Flock. So when we access the information, we are accessing Flock's system. As far as retention goes, after 30 days, the information on the flock site is purged.
Okay.
And what that means is, after 30 days, when a camera collects information on a vehicle, unless we've accessed and searched for that specific information, Flock purges it, which means it's no longer accessible to Flock, no longer accessible to us or any other agency. It's gone.
So we don't have any cross-reference then on that? We don't have another data source at all?
No. Once that information is purged, there is no other source for that information.
Okay, Phoebe?
Thank you, Chief, for answering some of my questions I had
Absolutely.
beforehand. I just also wanted to let the public and other council members know that Vice Mayor Niederhofer,
The questions only.
I wanted to give context before I ask the
Okay.
question.
All right.
Can I do that?
Yep.
So I wanted to give context and a background that Vice Mayor Niederhofer and I both attended a roundtable that Flock Safety hosted. It was on Zoom, and the chief was there along with one other gentleman from our police department. That's what I wanted to give. And it was the chief legal officer and the chief customer experience officer. So during that call, they went over some of the questions and concerns we had, especially related to the Mountain View, what had recently happened in Mountain View. Something that I learned was around the change logs and how they didn't have change logs until recently. So I want to understand, was that something that was looked at, because I wasn't on the council yet when this original contract was approved? Was change logs something that was a have-to-have or was not part of the RFP process?
Change logs. I apologize, I'm not familiar with that.
So during the call, and they might have called it something different, but mostly software companies and maybe other companies, they have a log where you would log all of the different changes. So if I'm an admin of a certain system, you would see Phoebe checked out this file, Phoebe made an update with this button at 2:55 p.m. so that if anything goes wrong, you'd be able to see, not just to slap me on the wrist, but to also say, okay, this is how we solve the problem, figure it out backwards. So on that call, I believe it's also publicly known that Flock didn't actually have change logs implemented until more recently. And that's why there is that inconsistency between their view of what happened in Mountain View and City of Mountain View's view. So I don't know if that was something taken into consideration when originally choosing Flock.
Yeah, I don't recall that being a consideration, and I do know exactly what you're speaking of now. And I think that had to do with the nationwide search, as an example. And right, it is not possible to go back and see, going back that far, who did what, who provided access, who switched things on and off. That is something that my understanding Flock developed fairly recently.
Thank you. And then just to note going forward, that's a question, not a comment. Whose idea originally was it to expand our camera footprint? Is that coming from you and your office, Flock, or another person?
That came from my staff, myself and my staff.
Okay. So I think you had mentioned there was some gaps that you wanted to be able to alleviate with the additional cameras?
Correct. There were gaps and the benefits of additional information available for investigative purposes.
Okay, and then my last question is around, I know you mentioned several times here, and also you had responded before about data ever being made available to other agencies that we don't share with federal. What about like state-run agencies like fusion centers? Do we ever have a use case where we would be sharing with them? And then if we did, how are they bound to follow the same kind of data retention rules that we're following, that we expect our partners to follow?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any state agencies at this point, and I don't know, Lily, if you can help out, but they would be expected. Go ahead, Lily.
In the state of California, all agencies are blocked from sharing with any agencies outside of California, including the fusion centers. So even the fusion centers are not sharing with federal agencies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, public comment, please.
We have one speaker
For
on Zoom.
6.2 only,
Yes.
yes.
Pablo is the speaker.
Hi, thank you for that explanation. It's a bit reassuring to hear you say that you're not going to be sharing information with federal agencies, but I'm still very much concerned that when push comes to shove, they will force you to release the data, and it's been shown already. I mean, I want to be clear. I'm all for public safety and law and order, but I don't think this is about public safety. If we were concerned, should also be concerned about our privacy and how these companies are invading every single aspect of our lives. We've seen this administration use these tools to suppress free speech and target political opponents. We are being targeted, and we're using our tax money to fund this continued erosion of our rights and our privacy, because this is invading our privacy now. And I hope you do, but I have my doubts that you are going to have the power to stop them from taking our data and using it against us. I mean, this is especially ironic considering tonight's acknowledgement of Black History Month just a few moments ago, because the Black community is one of the most targeted groups in our country, and sad to say, but I am pretty sure they are going to use this also against that community. These companies don't care about us, they just care about the bottom line, and that's just the truth. I mean, that's just the nature of corporations. Their main goal is to make money, not to protect us. Your job is to represent us and to make sure that we are kept safe. I don't want to live in this kind of world where we just have a police state where we fear everyone that's not like us, and instead we spend money on this versus spending money on things like public transportation or housing or feeding people. That's where we should be spending our money on, not more things to monitor us and to keep us in line. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any comments on?
We do have one other
Oh, you
raised
have one
hand.
more? Excuse me.
Katie Beglinger.
Hi. Thank you for taking my comment. I don't have much to add to what Pablo just said because he said it so eloquently, and I really couldn't say it better, but I completely agree with everything that he said, and I really wanted to second his opinion on this. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more?
There are no more speakers.
No,
No more.
speakers?
No more.
Zero. Okay. Any comments? Okay. Stacy, you want to make a motion, or you want to comment? Oh, you have a comment. Go.
Thank you again, Chief, for responding to my questions and council's questions as well. I just want to share some thoughts around, I don't think this is binary. I understand and I support making our community safer. I do see that there is high return on investment with the current flock cameras, right? We have, let me see, 20 cameras solved about 160 cases. So that's pretty outstanding. My concern is more around, this is not for me just looking at a lens through what's going on in Mountain View and ICE. I also come from a software background where I've worked for companies that are hyper responsible, and I've also worked for companies whose motto was move fast and break things. And I'm not going to assign one of those labels to Flock. We did have a good call with them when we met with them, but I do have some concerns. Part of what makes them really nimble and successful is that they're able to move fast, ship things fast, and respond. And that's great. But that also opens up concerns for me specifically because of my background in software. We have to be able to learn from different companies who also have similar posture where it's like, well, we'll fix that later. I think that's okay to have that kind of stance and posture when it doesn't concern people's safety and privacy, right? If you're making an app that's for fun and music or something like that, You can break things and fix them later. The things we would be breaking is community trust and other things like that, which doesn't mean that Flock wouldn't be responsive. They have been responsive, so I would acknowledge that. But I just want to make sure that we understand that these 8 additional cameras, I guess I'm not understanding what we would get. I do hear you that it will help you and your team, and that's good. But given it's already doing such a great job with the current footprint we have, I'm not sure why we need to expand. I would like to see Flock systems, Flock Safety, further professionalize their security posture for me to support adding additional cameras, especially given the recent events that have happened with Mountain View and other places. Thank you.
Other comments? A comment?
Can I ask one question? I didn't ask a question.
You go ahead and
I
ask.
appreciate that. You talked about the areas where more traffic. Any indication that we might have had a stolen vehicle in those areas, or a vehicle that was used in another crime? Do you have any data on that?
I don't have specific information to offer regarding that to support the need in those areas. We just know several of those areas to be more of our targeted areas, whether that's for residential or vehicle-related crimes.
Well, we'll probably know next time with reporting. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
So then I'll go ahead and make the motion. Is that okay?
Comment?
Are we, I have no comments. I'm ready
Then
to
make,
make a motion.
unless there's a comment. I'm
Can
ready
I
for a
add one
motion.
more, Mayor Kiesel? Can we have, I think it was really valuable to have that roundtable with Flock, so if we were able to have more consistent, I don't mean like weekly, but maybe even quarterly, and really maybe focused around their security posture, I think that would be really helpful for me to be able to understand like where they're looking to go on their roadmap. Thank you.
So you're looking
Absolutely,
for
I would welcome that.
Thank you.
So then I'll go ahead and move approval of item 6.2. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. Okay, 6.4.
Item 6.4, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Foster City authorizing an appropriation of $87,179 from the Vehicle Replacement Fund 501 to account number 501-0560-431-4384, authorizing the purchase of 13 vehicles for a total amount of $852,183, and finding the purchase exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA 51061B3. Anyone who wants to provide public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Thank you.
So I have no questions per se on this item. I had my questions answered earlier today, but for the public's, I guess, knowledge, my questions were around why we are purchasing, why we are not purchasing electric vehicles. South Pasadena, they have 100% electric policy in place. I believe it's Fremont. They have started using Teslas for their police force successfully. And I understand that moving that direction requires quite a bit of infrastructure investment, and that can be quite expensive. There's issues with, right now, PG&E and just getting the electricity that we need. So I understand that, and I'm willing, and I also know that we need to purchase these vehicles. So my ask, my direction to staff would be, if my colleagues agree, I would very much like us to begin the process of moving forward to taking a look at what it's going to require to move us to a more electrified fleet policy, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so that may mean that we'll need to get a consultant in place probably to do that work, because we don't have
Well, your question
the staff.
originally was,
So.
why are we?
So,
why
my,
aren't we-
yeah, the
aren't-
question is why, yeah, I guess the basic question, and we can discuss that, is why are we not moving, why are we purchasing vehicles that are not electric?
Well, thank you for that question, and probably just to reiterate what you already stated, which is, that is correct, that would require quite a bit of planning and funding to build out the charging infrastructure at the police department to support those new vehicles. So certainly that would be something that would have to happen prior to purchasing of those interceptors.
So I guess the request is, and I'd like to see what your interest level is.
It's more of
is-
it's more your comment at that point.
Yes, it is. You're
Okay,
correct.
so any other questions? Patrick?
Yeah, Andrew, I want to thank you, first of all, for responding to my questions in such detail. Two questions I have. What is the approximate value, and I'm not holding it to you, of the cars that we're going to sell on wholesale going back? And if you don't have it now, maybe we can find that out later. And as you indicated in that, that will be returned into the 501, is that correct? Is that a replacement thing?
That is correct. And the estimated sale value is of roughly $4,000 to $7,000 per vehicle.
Per vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, and just, answer the former mayor, Jimenez, we did have that discussion on electric vehicles, and we had it twice.
Whoa,
Yeah.
you're getting into comment.
Okay, all right, that's
Stay
enough
with
comment.
questions, please.
All right. Well, anyway, we did have that discussion. I know Andrew was not here at that time, so maybe and mostly we're going to hybrid more than electric. That's what the.
That's your comment.
All right.
Please.
That's my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Phoebe, you have a question? Okay. Susie? Okay. Public comment?
We do not have public comment.
Okay, now you can make your comment.
Yeah, we went into discussion on the hybrid a long time ago, even on our retreat, and we talked about that, and the infrastructure needs to be there. But it seems like we've had an ongoing relationship with Ford, and Ford seems to be bringing in vehicles, and Ford has electric and hybrid vehicles, so I think it's behooved this council to push that direction if we can. But I think they're used to the type of vehicles that they have, and that's kind of hard to change right now. I don't think everything's going to be 100% electric anymore. As we know, Samtrans is doing electric and hybrid buses now. They have a hybrid factory in the East Bay, and they're going to be putting one over there. So let's push for that direction. I think that's a good direction to push. That's my comments.
Any other comments? Susie?
I would like to look at what that investment would be to build the infrastructure and move in that direction. But I also want to make sure we understand, specifically for police vehicles, that there are other needs in police vehicles. And Stacy, or Councilmember Jimenez, you said South Pasadena is 100% electric, and Fremont is using Teslas for police. But I would like to understand that it meets the police's needs. Maybe every police department is different, but we have equipment in police cars. There are monitors in police cars, and in my mind, I'm thinking that electric vehicles have that big monitor in the middle that might interfere with the monitor or the police computer that sits in the car as well. So I would like to get that understanding and how much money that might take to model the car to make sure everything fits. It's all about, how much is that costing? So I'd like to understand what the financing piece is to that and infrastructure needs.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, want to care to make a motion?
So I'll move approval of item 6.4. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item.
Item 7, new business, 7.1, 2026 State Legislative Platform and Policy. Anyone who wants to provide public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As you may recall, in December of 2023, Council had adopted its first ever state legislative platform and policy. During that time, staff noted that the legislative platform is a living document and recommended that the platform be updated, reviewed, and amended every other year in conjunction with the beginning of each two-year legislative session. So that's what this item is about, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dane Hutchings from California Public Policy Group to go over some of the changes that are being recommended as part of the 2026 update.
Good evening, members of the council. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Perfect. Give me one moment here. I'm just pulling up the presentation. So sorry for the delay. I'm having a technical issue. Give me one moment.
Is it time to break for a commercial or something?
Sorry. Got it right now. Okay. My apologies. All right. So, just wanted to quickly highlight some of the trends that we are seeing thus far in 2026. We are seeing, I guess from a timing perspective, I should also add that the bill introduction deadline is February 20th. We likely will see about 1,000 bills between now and when the week drop. But thus far, a couple hundred bills have been introduced, and we are seeing measures that touch on local government revenues, so parks, infrastructure, impact fees, Mitigation Fee Act. We are seeing indications that we are going to be seeing more bills that regulate local code and building standards. Lots of e-bike legislation already pending. There's a measure in and around transit-oriented development. There's some private equity issues with respect to gobbling up or purchasing single-family homes. A lot of things happening at the state level that we are just now digesting. Certainly be seeing more bills in the next couple of weeks, and more to come on that. From a budget perspective, we are seeing we're in a little bit of a better position from the budget. We are about 6% above projections for the end of January. In total, about $42 billion more than what was allocated or projected in the 25-26 adopted budget. That being said, a lot of those dollars are coming out and then going down through the Prop 98 obligations and rainy day fund obligations. And so one thing I did want to note is that, and this is the trend we have seen the last couple of years, that in the governor's January budget, he did not put our VLF backfill for the San Mateo County total obligation. As you know, last year was the first year that we saw a slight reduction, but we have been successful in getting the full backfill each and every year. From a timing perspective, as I mentioned, February 20th is the bill introduction deadline. We are then seeing, we'll see a huge flurry of policy committees start to happen right before the legislative spring break. We come back in the first, at the end of the first week of April, and then we're going to have hundreds of policy committees and a lot of these bills that are being introduced, advancing through their various policy committees. And that brings us really to the House of Origin deadline in late May, and then we transition to adopting the final 26-27 fiscal year budget, which then takes us to summer recess, and then that mad dash at the end of August, when we will be finishing the second year of the two-year legislative session. So I provide that background as to say, as Marlene mentioned, this is a living document. We try to make adjustments to the platform in recognition of every two-year cycle. The full platform is provided in attachment 2 to highlight those red lines. We really didn't make a lot of tweaks this year, just a couple of modifications. Again, the platform is aligned with the city's strategic priorities. It communicates to the state legislature, the public, and the administration where Foster City stands, what its goals and priorities are. It also allows us, from your consultant perspective and city staff perspective, as we see these 2,000 bills that get introduced every year, it allows us to go through and sort of effectively screen out bills that matter versus bills that don't matter to Foster City. So as opposed to really just saying, here are the, we're probably actively tracking about 900 bills for the city, but then we take all those bills that we're tracking and really try to narrow it down to narrow our focus to just a handful of bills that have the biggest impact to our city operation. So the policy and the platform really does enable us to do that and be not only proactive but quickly reactive as well. So as I said, as far as modifications, not too many. We made a couple of updates, 3 modifications of the existing statement, and a few 7 proposed additions. And so, as detailed in the slide, here are the areas of the platform where we made some of these adoptions and modifications. On the whole, we're trying to ensure that we can advance the city's sustainability goals as outlined in our climate action plan. We're seeing a lot of measures, as I mentioned, with respect to local agency tax and fee authority and developmental related fees, to reflect legislative recommendations from the state auditor in response to the new state housing element laws that are being floated, and to preserve local authority to promote bicycle safety. When we are, formally engaging or as part of our policy, having an adopted platform allows us to have sort of consistent engagement throughout the process. And so if the proposal that is pending before the legislature clearly aligns with our adopted platform, our process dictates the city manager may authorize with the mayor or an absence of the vice mayor to sign advocacy letters without bringing it back to council. And the reason why we like to do this is because as I've said, frankly, I wish that the state legislature would have the deliberate policy making that we have at the local level, but unfortunately we don't. We have seen pieces of legislation from concept to going to the governor's desk take place in 4 days. The legislature has the autonomy and the authority to really waive different rules and jam bills through the process, gut and amend bills in the second house, and so this really does allow us to be very, very nimble, and so I've seen oftentimes in practice whereby there's a bill that we want to perhaps take to council. By the time that we do a staff report analysis and it goes to council for review, the bill's been amended 2 or 3 different times, and so this again allows us to stay nimble. So just a couple of examples that we do as far as sort of our continuous advocacy efforts is, resubmitting our advocacy letters and modifying those based on amendments, testifying in policy committees, attending meetings on behalf of the city with stakeholders, legislators, regulatory agencies, and other, advocates, both, aligned with our goals and then also negotiating with those who may be on the other side, continuing to meet with
questions? Patrick?
Thank you for your presentation, and I greatly appreciate it. You narrowed it down quite a bit for us in Foster City. Concerning the VLF, as you know, we did get our first tranche of the vehicle license tax. Does it look, in most of the articles that I've been reading, it looks like litigation is going to have to take place, or is there any opinion on that?
Certainly. So yes, we did. We did receive a substantial amount. I think I will say that this is the first year we did see a 30% reduction. However, over the past 6 years, we've been able to get the full amount. From my understanding and conversations both with the county and what I've also been reading, is that there have been litigation filed, and so the state and the county and adjoining parties, a lot of the municipalities within the county joined the lawsuit and are in active litigation. That being said, we see that as a strategy to actually work, with Department of Finance, work with the administration, and continue to try to negotiate a permanent statutory fix. So we're looking at this as really sort of two tracks, where I think the county and those that joined the lawsuit wanted to preserve their legal rights through that process, but that isn't prohibiting our ability to continue to try to work collaboratively with the state and try to seek a permanent statutory fix. And I'm involved in a fairly small working group with your state legislative delegation, members of the county, and we're actively working on strategies to try and secure a permanent statutory fix.
And I had one more question. With a lot of our politicians and senators and assembly people, a lot of them are renters, and there's some undercurrent of reforming Prop 13. What is the narrative that you're hearing back there in Sacramento?
So I haven't heard of a direct attempt on Proposition 13. There is a ballot measure being sponsored by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Frankly, I mean, and to be candid, they sort of use a broad brush and say this is protecting Prop 13 or this is reforming Prop 13. In reality, what they are trying to advance really doesn't touch Prop 13. It just tries to eliminate local agencies' abilities to honor their sort of voter-approved property tax transfers that they're approving locally. Our team did pull together a fairly detailed analysis on what Howard Jarvis is trying to circulate. They have until, I believe, the 24th of this month to actually submit and have enough requisite signatures for that to qualify. And so we will find out soon if that measure is going to qualify, but that may spark some legislative action if that measure were to qualify. But more to come on that, depending on if they are successful.
Well, yeah, just try to keep us informed. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
Question?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dave, for your presentation. I have a couple questions. One is, how does this platform we're looking at tonight align with or conflict with some of the legislative bodies like League of California Cities or San Mateo County?
One of the things that we really try to do and be intentional with is to try and really craft this platform directly based on feedback from your staff and engaging with council on their specific goals and priorities throughout the year. And so in areas where we may be in conflict with the League of Cities, then we would have our own path and move forward. In areas where we try to, where we align, and I do think that more times than not, we're probably aligned with the League of Cities on varying policy issues. We try to work with them in a blended strategy. But want to be very clear, we work for you. And if we are on the opposite side of the League of Cities, then we'll have that conversation and we'll continue to move forward. But this platform does reflect your input, the council's input, staff's input, really with that lens.
Thank you, Dane. And I apologize, I called you Dave before I meant Dane. And then given that Foster City is over 50% renters and growing, are there any kind of priorities or platform around any kind of tenant rights or tenant protections?
I don't think we have a platform statement around tenant protections. A lot of the tenant protection legislation that was being advanced was really in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I know there was one piece of legislation this year that was trying to move through Assembly Judiciary Committee, but that bill failed to garner the requisite votes to advance. I'm not certain if there's going to be another attempt this year, but I don't believe I recall seeing, I'm pulling it up now, I don't believe I've seen
If I can add, Councilmember Venkat, past councils have had extensive discussions on AB 1482 and the Tenant Protection Act. However, the council as a majority could not come to a consensus on how we want to navigate that. And so what you see in the platform statements that were incorporated in 2023 and modified are what a majority of the council could come to an agreement on. So that's just a little background on.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Stacy?
This isn't necessarily regarding the legislative platform, more just sort of logistics with how you handle clients within the firm. This came up recently with CCAG. I sit on the legislative committee there. And if you have a client, for example, that takes a certain position that might be opposing ours, how would you handle that? Do you let your clients know? What's the process?
Yeah, happy to walk through our conflicts process, and I believe as an attorney, you can, you certainly are sensitive to the conflicts issue. We have, I would say, probably one of the strongest conflicts policies out of any firm. I'll preface this by saying that this does not happen very often, but in the case that we have two clients that have adopted opposite positions on a piece of pending policy, what we do is we inform both client contacts of said conflict. We divide that conflict and have an internal firewall. Those positions are assigned to different lobbyists of the firm with support, with independent support teams. All communication is firewalled. And then, each side would sort of advocate their points. Now, if for any reason either client feels as though they still don't feel comfortable with that policy, we would work with said client to identify a suitable subcontractor, which we as the firm would take on and pay for on that specific issue. And that's, again, we've never had to go to that level, but it is something that we're willing to do to certainly make sure our clients are comfortable in that situation.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Susie?
I don't necessarily have a question. I have a request to change something. Do you want that during comments?
Let's do it under comments,
Okay.
because that's staff internal, if you will. Yeah, okay. All right. Question from me. Marlene, I think this is in the report itself, page 103. Item number 4.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Is there a reason, and there may be, that's why I'm asking, is there a reason we left out committees? Because a bill, as you know, goes through could go through Housing Committee and then go through Appropriations, or so it may not necessarily be the author. Is there a reason we didn't put it in or just didn't?
I'm actually going to defer that today, and I don't think this came up when we thought of the policy statement, but maybe there's a rationale behind it.
Mayor, I do have the download for the mini packet, so I only have 44
Okay,
pages.
so Dave, this is the policy statement where it says the position letter will be sent to the bill's author, the city's legislative representatives, the CalCities, and other stakeholders.
Oh, I think that's just I suppose an oversight. So the way that it works, Mayor, is when we submit your policy position through the legislative portal, it is automatically distributed to each committee that the bill is being referred to, as well as your legislative delegation, and then we go the extra step of sending it to Cal Cities and some of those other stakeholders. But it does go to the committees that the bill is being assigned to through the portal. We can make the edit, but it's just a technicality. I apologize.
Okay, that's fine, and that's fine. I just want to make sure that it does go there, just because we're going to miss something, an opportunity, perhaps miss an opportunity. Okay, on your year-end review, can you tell me a little bit more about they're dissolving one committee and creating two? It's the housing and homeless agencies?
Oh, yes. Last year, the governor, using his executive authority, proposed the separation of housing and community development out of the larger business, the BCSH larger committee or secretary. So we now have a secretary of housing and homelessness. There's no additional funding, there's no additional structure changes, but now we have a new secretary versus having it under BCSH. We have not seen any tangible differences in how the government is reacting or engaging thus far, but that has been technically a restructuring under this administration.
More bureaucracy, right?
Perhaps.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Nice political retort. Do we know what the state budget deficit is right now, or surplus?
Depends on who you ask. So we have it, or I should say, Department of Finance and the governor's office believes it's around $2 billion. The legislative analyst's office believes it's closer to $12.5 billion. This is evolving because we rely on the fiscal year. Every time the tax receipts come in, that budget actually is beginning to shrink, or the deficit is beginning to shrink. So as I mentioned, year out, we're actually 22% above in revenues above what was projected. So that's where the Department of Finance thinks it's a little bit of a smaller gap, whereas the LAO, the Legislative Analyst's Office, the nonpartisan office, believes it's a little bit higher, closer to $12 billion. One of the outlying issues is what's happening at the federal level, I believe with HR 1, and that could, depending on how the reimbursements work on the Medi-Cal side, could put us in a little bit of a deeper hole. And I think that's what the LAO is still kind of playing on in their calculus right now. But again, it depends on who you ask on how bad the deficit is right now.
Okay, and then the last question is, and I know I asked you when we were one-on-one, and it was, if you have two cities that are taking opposing positions on a specific bill, how do you handle that?
Certainly, I believe I addressed that in Councilmember Jimenez's question, but I'm happy to run it back. So if we have two clients that have an opposing viewpoint or have adopted different positions, we notify each client of the conflict. We firewall out and separate those issues, whereby we have two lobbyists, two dedicated support teams supporting those individual lobbyists. All communication is firewalled, and if for some reason there isn't an issue beyond that, where either client feels as though they're not receiving the same level of service, then we would identify and work with you on identifying a suitable subcontractor for that specific issue, and would pay for it ourselves to ensure that you are still feeling you're getting adequately represented until that issue is resolved. That's our conflict policy.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but it's just something that comes up in my mind. Okay. Question, Patrick, another question?
Yeah, no. Thank you for answering the questions for Art. I had a couple questions now that we have the approximately $12 billion possible deficit. Are the three areas where the state would consider cutting be housing, VLF, and property taxes? Wouldn't those be the first three major revenues for the state?
So, so the state already has eliminated has zeroed out all new housing and affordability funds. It's one of the issues, frankly, that really, I find that to be a challenge. They say that the budget is where your values are, and so a lot of times, from our perspective, we hear that we need more affordable housing, and we need more affordable housing, and then the governor has zeroed out all the money for affordable housing. Now, I will say that we did hear some welcome news from the chair of the Assembly Budget Committee, and said that, look, we need to double down on affordability. We need to double down on more affordable housing. So the legislature may have a different thing to say about that, and we'll want to negotiate in more dollars for affordable housing, which we're certainly engaged in. But I do think that when you're talking about, and this is why I look at this year as a big year of defense, specifically for our local revenues. We've seen in time and time again, when the state's budget is running low, they start looking downward. They look to county and city revenue pools to pull from. And frankly, that's, the elimination of the vehicle licensing fee, and this whole swap that was negotiated back in 2004, that's what's put San Mateo County now in this exact issue of DLF. So when I think your instincts are correct, when the state is facing budget difficulties, they look to try and close their gap with local revenues, and that's where our team and advocates across the state are really trying to push back and hold the line on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Public comment.
We have two speakers on Zoom. The first is Yiming Luo.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just wondering, I have a question for staff, why there is a refinement made to transportation policy number 1 to strike transit-oriented development and replace it with last-mile transit. I don't know if it has the forbidden D word, the one that starts with D and ends with development. Is that why it got struck, or I was wondering why that was changed? Maybe we could add an implementation of Bike Ped Master Plan into that to replace enhanced pedestrian safety, so that we could get a larger kind of base. So it's enhanced cyclist and pedestrian safety. Public safety policy number 4 supports legislation and policy efforts that promote regulations around e-bikes. I was wondering, can the city clarify that it would not support AB 1942 that would require e-bike licenses for Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes? Because I feel like the problem is with e-motorcycle riders, and they're already illegal. It's already illegal to ride an e-motorcycle, and that would just impose a burden on legal e-bike riders. I'd also like to propose 2 policies to be added to the platform. Recent Cal Matters investigation found that California has some of the weakest DUI laws in the country, and more than a decade ago, State Senator Jerry Hill tried to require in-car breathalyzers for all DUI offenders, but that bill failed. And so there are bills that would make it a felony to have a second DUI in 10 years. Right now it's 4 DUIs in 10 years, and it would require DUI offenders to install, all DUI offenders to install ignition interlock devices. I would ask that the include in its platform that it would support legislation that strengthens and enhances driving under the influence laws. And secondly, asking the city to include language that it would support amendments to the California election codes to expand safe harbor provisions in response to district elections demands under the California Voting Rights Act. As you all know, we were forced to move to bi-district elections, and so I think other formats of elections, such as ranked choice voting, could be a remedy to those complaints under the California Voting Rights Act, and would be a better representation of what our city is versus bi-district elections, which have their own host of problems. Thank you.
Next, we have Pablo.
Pablo, okay.
Hi. Well, I understand that there's a lot of bills and policies presented each year. I just want to know, do you write letters on behalf of Foster City without them being presented to the public? What sort of feedback do you get from the community, not just one or two representatives, but the community as a whole? How do we as the public know what you're sending or lobbying for other than this presentation? I could be wrong, but from what I remember, it was council voted for you to be able to take action on our behalf without being presented to the public. I just want to know if that's still the case or if I may be misinformed.
Okay,
We have no more speakers.
all right. With that, comments? Stacy?
So I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I think it's a fairly robust platform, but I do agree with some of the changes suggested by our first speaker. So I think I have 3 changes that I would like to see. So I don't know if you want me to go through them one by one or just throw them all out there and see what sticks. So the first, I really do agree with his first suggestion with supporting. So this is in regards to the transportation goal number 1, and changing that, tweaking it slightly to add in the focus of any programs or projects that would support the implementation of our bike and pedestrian master plan, and then as well as facilitating that first and last mile transit projects. I think I would leave transit-oriented development out, just because I know it's a hot button of our community, but I don't know, I think anything that can help with moving people in and out of our city, I think we need to support. So however, we can tweak that one. So that's the first one. The next one I think I would like to see is moving forward, moving down, his discussion of strengthening our DUI laws. I don't have a problem with that. I think as much as we can support our citizens and allow them to, weigh in on what we're doing, I think we should support it. So this is one of those things that I'd be willing to support. And then lastly, I do like his suggestion that we also support any alternatives to district elections such as ranked choice voting.
Okay. That's it?
Do you want to discuss those now? So I don't know how we want to do this. I mean, if there's any, again, we'll need support for those, right? Three of you will have to support that.
Yeah, okay, I'll bring those up. Let me get some of the comment.
That's
You may
fine.
have
Yeah,
more.
I'll throw that out there, and then we can
Okay.
circle back if we
Phoebe,
need
do you
to.
have a comment?
Sure. Comments, right?
Yeah.
I do support the first speaker's comment or recommendation around transit-oriented development. I know that Councilmember Jimenez said that's a hot button for our community. I think we want to be careful about who that is a hot button for. It's not a hot button for our entire community. It certainly is for some community members, but I thought that's the goal, is to put development near transit, because then it feels like a shell game, because you can't put it away from transit and you can't put it near transit. Where do we put it? So I would be in support of adding that, not necessarily taking away last mile. I think both are important because it's different use cases. I do support the DUI. Anything we do to make that stronger. It's sad that that wasn't able to pass. You need 4 to get a felony. That's crazy. I do support ranked choice voting as well. That's something that pretty common in other cities. So why not get with the times? And that actually lets people feel like their vote is not quote-unquote wasted, because they have been able to pick their first choice, their second choice, and so on.
Okay. Patrick?
Yeah, I would support, and I brought up that comment on the transit thing, and I used the example of what BART is doing with Uber passes, and we need to be able to be adaptable. We have quite a few people in Foster City that would take public transportation to the train, but that last couple miles, if it takes them 30 or 45 minutes, it's done. So I would support some kind of connection with transit and working with public transit so we can get people to take public transportation. I think there are at least a couple hundred people in Foster City that would be dying to do that. I definitely support the DUI support situation. I know I was hit by a drunk on a head-on accident, caused me a lot of grief for many, many years. As far as the district elections, I'm not necessarily thought it was a great idea that we did district. I'll have to look at the rank voting situation a little closer to make any decision on that.
Okay. Susie?
Thank you. I have one more to throw in there, and it's in transportation. It's the goal number 3, support joint planning efforts and projects with Foster City's neighboring cities on traffic congestion and relief projects. I want to see that expanded to not just our neighboring cities, but maybe neighboring agencies or state agencies, so it can include bridges. I think that's one of the biggest traffic issues in Foster City is the San Mateo Bridge. So I would like to expand that to include some kind of, to include bridges. So that might be working with more than just our neighboring cities. I can support the change on number 1 in that section, DUI, and for district elections, I would support anything that would make it so we wouldn't have to go to that. So I don't want to limit it to alternatives. Just alternatives for that. So just not limiting it. Right.
Okay. Transportation, if you recall, I was the one that said, or maybe some others agreed with me, but I said, I can't support the regional measure, the sales tax, 2% or the 0.5% sales tax, because it was for transportation, but none of it addressed transportation in Foster City. So, yes, I think that answers that part where I am on that. DUI continues. When I wrote this down, I didn't even think in terms of the report that we got from the chief on the DUIs that we've had, but we still get them. I'm fine with that. And I voted yes on the district elections with my arm tied behind my back, or twisted behind my back, because the state continues, or the higher legislators, if you will, continues to believe on the fact that one size fits all. And just something a little bit humorous. I was talking to the city of Colma, and today, when you're elected at large, you win with about 210 votes. So if you divide that into 5 districts, you only need 40 votes on average. Okay, so now that you take the 6 people that's living in your house, you only need 34 more people in the block. Kind of silly. So there's got to be something that's a little bit more rational. San Francisco, San Jose, the large cities, yes. So I'm going along with you on that.
So if a member of the council wants to volunteer and recommend those changes, we'll capture that as part of the changes to the platform.
Was somebody's staff keeping the notes on it?
Yes, but there were some, I guess, divided on couple of items.
Oh, I think somebody from the council will certainly step up.
I think the only question I have is where are we all standing with adding in the language regarding a transit-oriented development? Do we want to keep that piece in as suggested or support transit-oriented development?
So, can I just add what was staff's rationale for removing that?
That would be helpful.
It's a planning term, transit-oriented development, just like mixed use, and it is really focused around development around major transit hubs, which we don't have in Foster City necessarily. And the real need has always been how do we connect our commuters from the Caltrain, whether it's San Mateo or Belmont, right? So that was the intent. But if council wishes to add that or keep it more broad related to transportation, that's fine. But just wanted to add that.
We're fine with making that change. It's just that you're advocating for something that's really not going to have an impact on Foster City, but it does have an impact on other communities. So it is a policy decision by the city council, either way.
Go ahead.
So I don't agree that transit doesn't impact Foster City. I guess maybe I'm a ghost, but I literally commuted using transit in Foster City. I drove or took a shuttle to BART, did that, get Caltrain. So when we say it doesn't impact people, there's a nuance to that. It does impact people. There's people. Foster City is one of the highest municipalities using highest user rate for commute.org for those shuttles. So there's absolutely an appetite. So I think we want to be really careful when we say nobody here, it doesn't affect us. It absolutely does. We just don't have, we ourselves don't have a BART or Caltrain. That's correct. But there's many people who are commuting. I don't have those exact numbers, but there's people doing that. So I just want to make sure that we delineate that just because it's not your personal experience doesn't mean it's not valid.
I'm going to counter that comment, okay? You talk about, what was the public transit that you took from your house, where you live now, to, say, Caltrain?
Well, sometimes I would take the FCX bus, which left directly from Foster City. Sometimes I would take the BART, depending on which company I worked for.
How far is it from you?
Huh?
How far is this bus stop from you? Where you live?
Walkable?
Okay.
I don't understand. Are you trying to challenge that I didn't take the transit?
No. I'm not questioning your perspective.
Yeah.
Because the bus service, public transit in Foster City, has been terrible as long as I've been here.
Okay.
Patrick can
Well,
probably-
I literally rode the FCX for like 2-3 years. Yeah. On an almost daily basis.
Would you be better off if you had more?
More what?
More bus service, more frequently, more
Sure,
routes.
absolutely.
And that's the case that I'm making.
Okay. But that wasn't the point I was
Not to
making.
eliminate transit. Okay, I'm not suggesting that at all.
But when you say it doesn't affect, that's what I wanted to.
What are we going to get? Are we going to get more bus service for $2
I don't
million?
know.
And I don't think so.
So
And
we need to
that's-
advocate if we're the council, right? And we sit on regional committees. I think that would be our job to do that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
We're going to lose anyway.
Oh.
On the regional measure?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
So my suggestion is we keep it broad, right? Because we want this to be a flexible document that would work. So I'm going to make the recommendation that I'm just going to try it and go for it and see what happens. So the motion is by minute order to receive and accept the report as well as make the following changes. The first change would be to change the transportation goal number 1 to include the following language: support legislation that would maximize the effectiveness of funding for local transportation projects throughout the city where appropriate, including programs or projects that facilitate transit, last mile transit, and the implementation of our bike and pedestrian master plan. That doesn't necessarily negate transit-oriented development. I would also include language regarding supporting legislation that strengthens and enhances driving under the influence laws. as well as include language that supports alternatives to district elections. That is, and as well as Councilmember Niederhofer's suggestion regarding working with not just local cities and agencies, but state agencies regarding transit as well. Thank you.
I'll second that.
You comfortable with it?
Yes.
You got some, okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item.
Item 8, reports. 8.1, Parks and Recreation Committee's 2025 year-end report, review of mission statement and goals for 2026. Anyone who wants to provide public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Hello, Mayor Kiesel, members of the City Council. I'm Derek Schweiger, Director of Parks and Recreation. Tonight, staff and our committee members are here to present the 2025 year-end report for the Parks and Recreation Committee, as well as approve a mission statement and accept the goals for 2026. Of course, we're looking for direction from the committee, or direction for the committee from the council on any initiatives or priorities for the upcoming year. And so what I'd like to do is introduce our former or outgoing chairperson of the Parks and Rec Committee, who will first present. His name is Raj Tiwari. And then followed by Raj, I'll have Lisa Fong, who's the vice chair for this year for the committee. So I'll turn it over to Raj.
Thank you, Derek. Mayor Kiesel, council members, and staff, good evening. I'm Raj Tiwari. I served as the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee in 2025, and I'm here tonight to present our year-end report. 2025 was a year of momentum. The committee provided input across our 4 goal areas. First, our vision for parks, facilities, and programs. Second, safe and well-maintained facilities, parks, and the lagoon. Third, community engagement, and finally, sustainability. We participated in Parks Master Plan study sessions, shaping guidelines for our 24 parks and 8 miles of levee trail. We provided oversight of the community center rebuild from demolition through structural steel. We supported the community garden launch and the Canada Goose management program. And our members volunteered at events throughout the year, from summer days to the concert series. The full report has been submitted for the record, but with your permission, I would like to take a moment to reflect. My last committee meeting was this past December, and I'm stepping away after almost 5 years. And this has given me a chance to look back on what this experience has meant for me. I applied to this committee in the spring of 2021 in the grip of COVID. Parks were among the few places where neighbors could safely see each other. And I wrote in my application then that I fell in love with Foster City the first time I set foot here back in January of 2000. And that as an immigrant who made this city my home, I wanted to give back. I had never served on a public body before this. Now, what followed was a remarkable 4.5 years. I was fortunate to serve at a truly pivotal time. When I joined, our facilities were shuttered and our programs were running on Zoom, if anybody remembers that. Today, a new community center is rising from the ground. The levee trail is complete. A parks master plan is taking shape. A community garden is growing and blooming. These are all generational milestones, and I had the privilege of having a front row seat, including on the Rec Center Rebuild Task Force. I want to thank the Parks and Rec staff, whose dedication has kept our programs alive through incredibly difficult times, especially Director Schweiger for his leadership, and Tiffany Oren and Frank Fanera for their unwavering commitment to the city. I want to thank my fellow committee members for their thoughtfulness and commitment, and I want to thank this council for your trust and your steady support. This committee is in excellent hands with Chair Shirish Bindal and Vice Chair Lisa Fong. Bindal could not be here for this evening, so I'll hand things over to Vice Chair Lisa Fong, who will present our 2026 goals. 2026 should bring the opening of our new community center and the adoption of the Parks Master Plan, and I will be cheering them from the audience. Serving on this committee has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my time in Foster City. I'm grateful and I'm proud of what we've accomplished together. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor and City Council. Before I begin today, I do want to say today is the first day of our Lunar New Year's. So I like to say Kung Hei Fa Choi and San Tai Kin Hon, which translates to Happy New Year and good health in the years to come. Again, my name is Lisa Fong. I'm the Vice Chair for the Park and Rec Committee. Tonight, I want to review with you the 2026 goals. I won't repeat everything that you have right now, and we probably want to go home since it's a dark, rainy night. But I do want to highlight some key priority areas and specifically call out some key points. As we, as a committee, develop our goals, we're reminded that we are serving as a advisory committee to the City Council and a bridge to our residents. Our goal is guided by the Council's priorities and focused on ensuring Foster City's park and recs programs reflect the needs and values of our community. First, as Raj was mentioning, the first is the vision of the park and facilities and programs. We will evaluate whether our infrastructure and program meets our current and future needs, as we recognize that things are constantly changing. Key efforts include supporting the very, very exciting rec center rebuild and opening, guiding the temporary facility transition, and contributing to the Master Parks Plan, as well as advancing age-friendly city initiatives to ensure accessibility for all ages. The second is pertaining to safe and well-maintained facilities, parks, and lagoon. Safety, cleanliness, and sustainability remains foundational. We will provide recommendations on lagoon safety, water quality, and geese population management plan, levee signage, safety, and bike and e-bike awareness. Third is our community engagement. This year we have 4 new members who are extremely active already in the 2 meetings that we've had in 2026. They're extremely engaged, and we remain committed to a broad community outreach through surveys, meetings, and events. Our goal is to increase participation, keep programs inclusive and relevant, and serve as ambassadors for the Park and Rec events. Last but not least, sustainability and partnership is going to guide long-term planning. We want to pursue partnerships with schools, service clubs, youth programs, nonprofits, and business to expand programs, support community gardens and environmental initiatives to strengthen our event sponsorship and increase shared usage of our facilities. With our fearless leader, Derek, and our committee members, we are looking forward to working with council, staff, and residents to keep Foster City Park and Rec vibrant, safe, inclusive, and sustainable. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Questions? None? Questions? Sure.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fong, and Happy Lunar New Year to you too. I have a question around, the success of the community garden. Definitely everyone knows about that, and that's wonderful. And that was in partnership with the Rotary, with Parks and Rec Committee, as well as Island United Church. Are there plans to maybe reach out to other faith institutions that may have some additional land that could be used for community gardens or for other community building purposes?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer that to Derek.
Sure. Thank you.
Provide some guidance on that.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lisa. Councilmember Fengat, thank you for your question. As you're aware, the Parks and Rec, the community garden that we currently have going right now is coming up on its 1-year anniversary of a 3-year pilot. This will be really the test for us as a city to see if doing this pilot and having a community garden will be successful and sustainable for the long term. So our hope is to continue the pilot, while at the same time looking at identifying other opportunities. We always would love to do more, and we would be able to identify land in Foster City that we can use and partnering with other groups. But we're going to start with the pilot for now, which also may involve even its expansion, its ongoing expansion. So our focus is going to be there, and then we'll look to expand that after that.
Thank you, Director. Another question I have is around, you mentioned age-friendly cities. That's wonderful to hear. Youth programs. What about any specific intergenerational programs that you may have in mind?
Derek, I need your help with that one too.
Well, I'll take an attempt for that. But this is, for the committee's benefit. Our focus is up to this point, Councilmember Venkat has been focusing on the community center. We have not spent as much time on age-friendly programming and looking at that. We will have a great opportunity with the new community center to look at expanding age-friendly programming for seniors, looking at additional partnerships and so forth. Obviously, our focus over the last few years has been leaning towards the community center and now the Parks Master Plan, but all of the recommendations that we were getting, not only through the project itself, but through the Parks Master Plan, really are leaning in to programs that will serve seniors and our age-friendly population. And so we will be focusing on that. That is a priority for the committee, but we haven't spent a lot of time there just yet. But look for more this coming year.
Yes, that is true, because we have had feedback that we need to focus more on that particular area. So I think this year will be a great year for us to start some of those considerations.
Thank you for welcoming that
Comment
feedback.
I'd like to offer on that one briefly. So one of the topics we had discussed as a committee was having more involvement with the Youth Advisory Committee, having their members participate with us at some cadence. And I believe with the new committee coming in place, we'll have more of that, and that would bring really intergenerational initiatives into play.
Thank you. Good point. And then my last question, or maybe it's an ask. Can I do the ask?
What are you trying to add?
Oh, no.
You have something done?
Something done?
Yeah, well, when you...
No, just building on what the committee does, which is reinforce Parks and Rec initiatives like the community center, that you also help with managing community expectations as we bring the new community center online, right? Because the staff has such a heavy load there. So helping be the eyes and ears, especially if people are maybe a little grumbling about July 4th or something like that, that's where we need like ambassadors like you and others on the committee to help spread the word.
Yes.
Just for the record, that was more in the comment section than it was a question.
I apologize.
No.
Okay.
Just clarification.
Then you don't have to hear from me again.
Patrick, you have anything?
Comment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Questions?
No questions.
Okay. Now, I don't have any questions either. Public comment.
We do not have public comment.
Okay. Patrick.
First of all, thank you, Raj, for serving. And I appreciate being a liaison again for the committee. You've got a great crew there, Lisa, and Derek's running a good organization there for you. So congratulations.
Susie?
I also want to thank the committee. What a wonderful job you guys do, and all the work that you spent. You've had your hands full, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have just one comment, and that's the community garden was talked about for a long time, and it just seemed to get a fire lit under it just before I got on as liaison of the Park and Rec Committee, and I think Patrick had a lot of impetus into getting that thing started. So kudos where they're due. So I'm looking for a motion. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry about that.
Please raise your hand.
I know. Sorry. My imperceptible nod doesn't work. I know, really. So I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know if it's an appropriate ask, given that it sounds like you already have a very full plate this year, and this may be more something that's a council discussion that we need to have later. So I apologize if this is inappropriate, but Councilmember Venkat brought this up during our retreat, and I also feel like it's something that I would love to see is more of a focus on, or maybe a focus on arts and culture. And that could take the form of, instead of a whole separate committee, maybe a subcommittee. Maybe two people could get together and think of ways that we could include, add arts and culture projects to the city. So I don't know, maybe that's just something to think about, and maybe it could be a spin-off. Maybe you could work on developing an arts and culture committee through the Park and Rec. I don't know, but something that I think would be great to see.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. As a matter of fact, last year we did have a meeting that we just pulled in ideas regarding arts and cultures and amongst many other things, right, with the committee. And so there was a big, long list of, cultural things like Chinese New Year parade, perhaps like some of the cities have. And so we did include those things. So it would definitely be something we want to consider put more emphasis on for 2026.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes.
And I just want to say thank you, Mr. Tawari, for all of your service over the last 5 years. You've been a great asset, so thank you.
Yeah, listening to Stacy just brought up something else too, and that's, as we all know, we have an aging demographic. We're going to have more seniors. Perhaps we should, while we're looking at an art and culture committee, if you will, or some solution, maybe we should focus on the senior population as well. I see 55 and senior tech in here, and anything else. Bus transportation, what have you. Maybe they can fit together. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
I love that
other than
idea.
that, I'm looking for a motion.
Yes, thank you.
I'll make a motion by minute order to receive and accept the report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item.
Item 8.2, Canada Goose Management Plan Update. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. This item tonight provides an update on implementation of the Integrated Adaptive Canada Goose Management Plan. The plan was developed and approved to address ongoing impacts from resident Canada geese within Foster City Parks and along the lagoon using a coordinated, non-lethal, and adaptive management approach. Following council approval of the plan and completion of the environmental review, the city issued a request for proposals and, in August of 2025, awarded a professional services contract to Wildlife Innovations to carry out implementation through a 3-year pilot program. Since execution of that contract, the focus has been on establishing baseline conditions, securing required permits, and building the operational framework necessary to support active field implementation. That work has now transitioned into on-the-ground management activities at priority parks, including hazing and seasonal monitoring efforts. As the program progresses, implementation will continue to align with seasonal goose behavior, including nesting and molting periods, with continued evaluation and refinement over the course of the pilot program. Staff is joined this evening by Dan Beitman of Wildlife Innovations, who will assist with the presentation and provide additional detail on current implementation activities and next steps. And with that, I will turn it over to Dan.
Good evening, Council, City staff, and other attendees. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for inviting me to provide an update of what we've been working on within the implementation phase of your Adaptive Canada Goose Management Program. The following update mostly stems from our efforts during the recent performance period, which was August 4th through 31 December. However, at the end of this presentation, I'll provide a brief introduction to what we've been working on since the end of that period. Next slide, please. During this performance period, we worked on all of these tasks with the exception of task 7. That task will be implemented later in the program. Many of these tasks required work to obtain permits, acquire equipment, and also to develop deployment strategies before they could be implemented within city parks. Discussion of these program tasks is integrated into the following slides. Next slide, please. The project initiation phase included the following elements. We attended a kickoff meeting with city departments, during which we presented all proposed methods and discussed the implementation of each with relevant city department staff. We toured the lagoon with city staff to identify access areas and constraints, marked potential nesting areas for geese, and generally just got to know the lagoon from the water side, which was great. We conducted initial site assessments within priority parks. We designed, during those assessments, we designed survey schemes and initial hazing and deterrent strategies for each park. We purchased project-specific equipment, hired and trained personnel, and developed task and method-specific protocols. We developed a project-specific database and data collection protocols. Then we began field work, beginning with surveys and camera surveillance, and built a foundation for all hazing and deterrence methods to come. Next slide, please. We redeployed cameras within city parks during this period. Camera surveillance of geese is an essential element of this program. Cameras allow us to see where geese are and when they're there, to target them using the set of tools identified for this project. This supports maximum efficiency within the program and will result in a more effective program overall. We are currently operating 12 cameras in 7 city parks, 7 priority parks. Cameras are placed on lawns and some are on beaches. And cameras are set to take photos every 15 minutes, and we monitor those regularly via mobile application. Next slide, please. These are examples of some of the camera placements within priority city parks. On the right is the view from the camera place within Erkenbrack Park. From the photo, you can tell that we can see a lot of the open lawn area where geese forage and loaf, and also most of the beach. Next slide, please. We recorded observations of geese during all forms of work conducted within the city. This included transiting between parks and during specific surveys within priority parks and one control park. The locations of geese observed are identified in the map on the right of this slide, the right side of the slide. The brighter yellow color indicates higher density of goose observations. We recorded nearly 9,000 geese during this period. It is important to note that many of these were likely repeat observations of some of the same individuals. We do not believe that you have 9,000 geese living in the city. As you can see from the map, the priority parks were hotspots for goose activity, with a few additional areas, such as lawns along Foster City Boulevard, and a few non-priority parks were also used by geese. Next slide, please. So to gather baseline data regarding the timing and location of goose presence, to use for the before comparison, before initiating hazing, deterrence, and habitat modifications within these, we began conducting point count station surveys and goose scat transect surveys. When nesting season begins, we will add to this nesting bird seed surveys as a part of our efforts. We designed a customized survey scheme for each priority park and for one control park. That control park was Booth Bay, where no hazing or deterrence will be conducted. The map on the right is of Erkenbrack Park. The location of the goose point count station is identified by the teal colored dot. The nesting bird survey point is identified by the orange dot. The camera location is identified by the blue dot, and the yellow lines are the scat transects. Point count locations were identified to allow the surveyor to see the entire park from one location. Surveys were conducted for 3 minutes, during which all geese were counted. The locations of geese observed were recorded with GPS coordinates, and their behavior was noted. Scat transects were located to sample different parts of the parks. For example, the lawn, sidewalk, and beach areas that may be used differently by geese. Transects were walked, and all piles of scat were counted within a half meter of the center line of each transect. And this might not sound very exciting, but the data we collected before starting the hazing and deterrence will help us to evaluate and to describe to all of you which methods worked and which methods worked the best. Next slide, please. So in total, we conducted 739 point count station surveys during this period. We recorded nearly 6,000 geese in priority parks. Goose presence was greatest in October and trickled down by the time we reached December. More geese were absorbed in Booth Bay, Edgewater, and Marlin during the early part of this effort, but shifted more to greater presence in Sea Cloud by November and December. Next slide, please. To measure impacts to city parks from geese before and after management begins, and as an additional index to goose presence within priority parks, we conducted goose scat transect surveys. Scat transects were surveyed 1,500 times during this period. The figure to the right of the slide illustrates scat presence was similar to goose presence, which makes sense. More scat was observed at Edgewater, Gull, Marlin, and Sea Cloud than within other parks. Next slide, please. We met with Foster City Parks Department to discuss testing of habitat modifications within Erkenbrach Park and installation of an audio deterrent device in Marlin Park. We mocked up a design for temporary islands to break up sight lines for geese in Erkenbrach Park, using temporary flags to visualize and discuss the size and positioning of islands with city staff. And those islands are generally depicted by the green dots in the map to the right of the slide. We're preparing to implement and evaluate both strategies when goose presence becomes more regular again, which will probably be after the nesting season is complete. Next slide, please. We supported the City Communications Department in developing language and photos for the Canada Goose management page on the city's website. We're currently building a Canada Goose nest identification and reporting materials that can be added to the city's website or provided to citizens in other useful ways. As we move towards nesting season, it will be important that goose nests that are observed are reported to the city and to us so that management actions can be considered. Next slide, please. So during this period, we spent a lot of time working to acquire necessary federal and especially state permitting to allow us to capture, band, and place GPS transmitters on geese within Foster City. Between 29 and 31 December, we captured 7 geese in 5 city parks. We captured each captured individual was banded with a silver USGS service band on one leg and a yellow over black auxiliary marker on the other leg, which is shown in the photo to the upper right. Each goose was fitted with a GPS neck collar, which is the white collar. One goose wearing a transmitter was taken legally by a hunter soon after the transmitter was deployed. We retrieved that transmitter and it appears to still be functioning normally. 4 additional GPS collars will be deployed between May and June of 2026 during the molt period, one of those transmitters will be redeployment of the one that was shot by a hunter. Next slide, please. To the right is a map with approximately 1 month of GPS data collected from collared geese, and the map is trimmed to Foster City. Collars did document some interesting movements outside of the city, however, and we will provide more details and interpretation of that information in future reporting. The dots on the map display GPS points for collared geese that were recorded within 2 different time periods. The first is the first 2 weeks of January, and then the second is the second 2 weeks of January. each colored dot is a different goose, or each color is a different goose. The inside of some of the dots are white, and that indicates a GPS point that was collected before January 11th. And the others are the inside of the other dots are black, indicating a data point collected after January 11th. We looked at GPS data to see whether collared geese were starting to change their movement patterns before and after that January 11th period, because that is around when we started hazing geese from priority parks. Now, with only about 4 weeks of data, few conclusions can be drawn, but transmitters are working perfectly so far. During the first 2 weeks of monitoring, collared geese generally move between parks and wetland areas at the edges of the bay. During the more recent 2 weeks, collared geese began to move farther from the city. This could be due to approaching nesting season, but could also be due to our hazing efforts. There is a ton more that we can do with the data being recorded by these collars, all of which is going to be informative to this program. So I hope at this point in the presentation that you have a good understanding of the structural foundation that we have built for your program during this performance period. Everything is on schedule to prepare the program for what I expect to be the busy times of year for goose conflict mitigation, which lie ahead of us. And those times of year are the nesting season, post-nesting season, when all the juveniles show up in parks, and then the flightless molt period. Next slide, please. During the first period of performance, we spent time collecting data to be able to describe what goose presence was like before we started using hazing and deterrence tools to what it is like after we implement those tools. But we also spent time during this period acquiring and beginning controlled field trials with the tools that we propose for use in this program. The primary tools are represented on this slide, although these are not all of the tools. We developed city-specific and, in some cases, park-specific use procedures for each of these tools. This took more time with some tools. For example, the drone, we had to go through FAA and San Carlos air traffic control clearance procedures and flight scheduling. But on January 12th, we started applying hazing tools within priority parks. A few tidbits of information gathered since then. Preliminary results have identified that there are strengths and weaknesses to each tool, some of which we expected, others were a little surprising. Some examples. Geese do not appear to fear the drone when on the water in most cases. We were able to herd geese with the drone, but they seem reluctant to fly in most cases, indicating a lower level of discomfort. However, we're still testing this and adapting by adding different sounds played through the drone speaker and by altering our approach strategies. The remote-controlled amphibious device, on the other hand, is very effective on the water. Geese fly quickly after it is put into the water and begins moving towards them. The laser has been fairly effective on land. However, due to safety concerns associated with reflection off of the water, it cannot be used on the water. So an important early adaptation was that we added a remote-controlled boat to the set of tools to increase our capabilities hazing geese in water. So we built a brief video compilation to show you some of the hazing work that we have been doing in action. We will share the video next, but first a few caveats. We are not media production specialists, we are biologists. The priority was to complete the project work, not to photograph or video all of it. So we only began trying to capture some of our work in the recent weeks on video, photo and video, resulting in limited goose interactions that were able to be captured. However, we will collect more footage when geese return in numbers during the spring. And the last point is that not all methods that we applied were able to be captured on video. Without further delay, next slide, Frank, you want to play the video? guys hear me now? I'm back. Last slide is just any questions or comments.
Questions? Questions? Phoebe? Any?
Thanks, Dan. Do you prefer Dan or Daniel? Thank you for the video and the presentation. And staff did answer my questions prior to the meeting, but some new ones came up since you spoke. You mentioned that you likely observed many of the same geese repeatedly. You only have the 1 quarter of data, so you can't tell yet whether it's confirmed, but will you have more confirmation in the 2nd quarter and beyond of, I guess, geese that are staying in Foster City and geese that are leaving?
Only from the marked geese. So we had hoped to put out bans on as many geese as we could capture. We were only so far able to capture and ban 7 geese, of which 1 was removed. So we now have 7 birds wearing those double bands on each of their legs and then the GPS colors. Now those geese are, we believe, representative of individual groups of geese, so we can kind of, use those as markers for how the groups that they are a part of move around the city. But as of now, we can only identify those remaining 6 individual marked birds. We've discussed with the city strategies to try to mark more birds, try to ban more birds during the molt period, and that's still on the table. So we will be able to tell a lot. We can tell some information from the 6 marked birds, and then more marked birds will give us much more information.
Thanks, Dan. And my other question is around the nest identification pamphlet. I think that's a great way to get the city, the community members, they're very curious what's going on. So I also wanted to put in a plug to include the pamphlet, or a way to report the nests through a SeeClick Fix, which is our app, our community's app, to report any issues. So it's just something I noticed. All right, thank you.
Patrick, you have any questions?
No, I appreciate the detailed report, and I would kind of lean because
Hold it.
my question is, how many geese do you think we have approximately in Foster City?
That's a tough thing for me to say because we don't have marked individuals. The best data and information that we have on that so far is the city's ongoing annual counts, where they count multiple locations at the same time to get a snapshot of how many geese are in the city at that time. So that's kind of the best I can give you for an estimate right now. If we have more marked birds, more birds wearing bands, we'll be able to tell you more.
Right, and I would encourage you to do that because we need a certain percentage to really evaluate where those birds are staying at night, where they're nesting. So I would encourage and support that you ban more birds.
Absolutely. We're interested in helping to do that. The GPS transmitters will tell us where those birds are going to sleep at night.
And where are they?
I mean,
so far, where are they sleeping? Are they sleeping in Foster City? Or are they sleeping out?
Not in Foster City, from the GPS data. They are in Belmont Slough and the Belmont Redwood Shores kind of, what is the name of that? Redwood Shores Island. It's kind of a wetland area to the southeast of Foster City and to the northeast of Belmont Shores, and then a few went to to Bear Island. A few birds went as far north as Coyote Point, which is closer to San Francisco International Airport, and 1 bird crossed the bay towards Alameda. But very short short time period that we have measured so far. So a lot more to learn.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? Susie?
I have the same question as Councilmember Venkat about the being able to report the nests on the Fix-It app. I don't know if that's possible, so if it is.
We discussed that with the city in the early part of developing this program. We haven't revisited that yet, but as soon as we have these materials completed, which is very soon, we're going to reinitiate that conversation with the city, and that sounds like a great idea to me. A way for the city, or citizens to report, and the data to come in to the city and then to us.
Good? Okay. in this, page 168 and 169 of the staff report, it's got a bunch of numbers on it, and there's a real difference between October and November. October and November are close enough, but there's a big drop in November. Is there a reason for that, or?
Yeah, that's a question for me.
168, yeah, page.
Well, based on what the city has told us before, this is sort of a natural time of year that geese, the number of geese in parks is reduced. From a goose biology standpoint, this is called the pond hopping time of year, where geese kind of start moving around, some of which is potentially to or identify and utilize additional food sources as they are trying to fatten up ahead of the breeding season. Additionally, as it gets kind of not necessarily in November, but now this time of year, February, they're starting to think about breeding and pairing up and things like that. So all those things affect goose movements. Specifically, the change from November to October and November, I don't have a great answer for that.
Okay, and then it picks up back in December. So that was, I could see a trend, but there are a little over 5,000 in each of October and December, and then 1,500 in November. So it's quite an anomaly. So, okay, that was really only my question. Yeah. Public comment, any more questions? Staff from council?
We have one speaker, Yiming Luo.
Hi, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a question. Where was that one geese that was taken? I'd love to know where it is legal to take Canada geese. And also, if geese reside in our city, do geese nests count toward our arena? Thank you.
We have no more speakers.
That's it? Okay, thank you. All right, comments. Stacy, you want to start? Have you got a comment? Okay. Patrick?
Yeah, just great work. I'm just looking forward to more banned geese and more cameras so we know where they're at, and we're going to have to deal with where they're staying too, even if it is out of town.
Thank you.
Okay. Phoebe?
Thank you, Dan, for the presentation. I just also wanted to shout out the heat maps as well as the video that you made. I know you made a joke that you're not videographers or filmmakers, but even these things, maybe they can be reused so that we can include them in communications to the public. Again, the public is really, this is a hot topic, as you can imagine, so I think the more visual we can get to them is important for those who are more visual learners, as well as the written communications. Thank you.
Yeah, that was pretty much going to be one of my comments, and that's well, on a scale of 5, I'd give it a 4.6 for your video. I thought it was pretty good, actually. Just a point that I would like to bring up. On the 17th of February, I ended up playing, of January, played Metropolitan Golf Course over across the bay. And I've played it before, but this is the first time I saw an animal, what I thought was an animal out on the middle of the fairway, like a coyote. And when I finally got there, it was a statue. And then further along, there were 3 more on the course. And I noticed that there was very few geese. Now, I don't know if that's indicative of anything, but if we could get something that moves, that might help. I don't know. Anyway, just as something in my observance. Other than that, looking for a motion.
Make a motion. Motion to adopt the 8.2 Canada Goose Management Plan. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item.
Item 9, resolutions for adoption. 9.1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Foster City approving the Community Center Business Operations Plan as a guiding framework. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Good evening, Mayor Kiesel and members of the City Council. I am Derek Schweigert, Director of Parks and Recreation. Tonight, staff and the city's consultant with Pros Consulting, this is Michael Svets, will be presenting the Foster City Community Center Business Operations Plan and the financial framework to inform the operations of the new community center. So just as a way of background for the council, City Council will recall that prior and during construction of the new community center, the City Council directed staff to develop a pro forma and a business operations plan to provide insights and a picture into a future community center's operations and its financial performance. In addition, the plan would provide a framework and a roadmap for the new facility to operate efficiently, sustainably, and effectively serve the Foster City community and its visitors. On March 5th, 2025, the city approved an amendment with Group 4 Architecture. If you recall, Group 4 is our architect for the project, who has a part of their original proposal an option to perform a financial and operational analysis for the new facility. So we opted to do that. We added that service, and Pros Consulting was identified in that proposal to perform the added scope. So Pros Consulting was also one, if you recall from our Parks Master Plan approval back in December, they were also a subcontractor to WRT, who also worked with our Parks Master Plan. So working with the Parks Master Plan as well as the pro forma worked well seamlessly with these two different plans. So again, the Foster City Community Center, as you know, represents an investment for the city of around $65 million. It's a modern civic facility designed to serve the community for decades. The new facility is not only larger, it supports multiple uses, including premium spaces, and carries higher operating costs and community expectations. For those reasons, past operating practices are no longer suitable, which is why the business operations plan framework has been presented or will be presented to you today. The plan addresses key areas, including staffing, access, rentals, and partnerships in great detail. For tonight, the City Council should focus its attention on not only approving the overall framework and providing direction, but the approval of the plan does not authorize specific vendor agreements, pricing actions, or operational changes that will otherwise require separate council approval. So that concludes my staff report. I would like to turn the presentation over to Michael from Pros, who will take us through the plan. And of course, both Mike and staff will be available to take your questions at the conclusion of the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much. And while Derek's getting that teed up, I appreciate the opportunity, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, to present this to you. I am actually a recovering Parks and Recreation Director. So I did spend 20-some years on the city side of the table and, in fact, have had the opportunity to be a part of the development and opening of 3 different recreation facilities during my time. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart. We'll see if we can get this thing to work. If not, I will just do the next slide, please. I know. Almost. All right, great. So I know that the report was lengthy, and I appreciate the time and attention that you all spent going through that, including the appendices associated with it. Again, this is not to rehash every last detail of every last page, but just again to provide you an overview and an opportunity to answer any questions that you all may have. So just kind of dive into the overall approach that we took, the understanding of what that new Foster City Community Center looks like, operational goals, operational assumptions, financial projections, and then any questions. So our approach. We did this very collaboratively with staff. We were certainly very familiar with the department. We understood the programming opportunities from the Parks Master Plan, but this was a very collaborative approach to really understand the baseline of what the old facility and how it operated and its expenditures, its staffing levels, its revenue, but then also working with Group 4 and staff to understand what that new facility looked like. So we have to lean into how your community wants to use those spaces. Yes, we know the spaces are developed, but how are they going to be used? How are they going to be experienced? What are the standards, the best practice approach to managing and operating those facilities, understanding financial revenue and partnerships associated with it? And then, of course, it takes people. It's going to take staff and making sure that you have enough staff capacity, but you're efficient, effective, and you're functionally aligned to be able to deliver on what the community expects. Obviously, cost recovery is just revenue divided by expenditures, and you come up with that total cost recovery percentage. We did not have any cost recovery percentage in mind at the beginning, so we didn't work this backwards to try to achieve a number. We really worked the plan, worked the data, and with the understanding that there was to be an expectation of having it recover more than it did the old facility, but we didn't walk into this saying 40%, 50%, 60%. We really allowed the business operational side of the plan to help drive the numbers. From an FCC perspective, this is kind of that overview in the site plan. It's in the exact same location as the old facility. We understand that the first floor is where a lot of the activity will take place, from gathering spaces to conference rooms, senior lounge, as well as obviously the large lagoon event hall. Upstairs is primarily some very hyper-focused spaces, whether it be some activity rooms, fitness rooms, arts and crafts. At the end of the day, we know that upstairs is limited only because of the fact that the event lounge or the event hall has a two-story facility to it. So in terms of just overall space functionality, social connections, program service space, private-public partnerships around ceramics, early education cafe, and of course rentals focused primarily on the lagoon event hall and the kitchens. In terms of operational goals, we established these kind of early on to really understand the nuances of how the facility would all work together. So number one, a community anchor and a social connector. The intention of this facility is to provide as much opportunity for as many people in your community to engage in it and use it throughout the course of a year. We recognize that it needed to have programs and services, but this is a balance between active and such things as ceramics or fitness classes or early education, and just being able to drop in and have coffee through the cafe or play bridge or play cards in the senior lounge. And then you have the rentals and partnerships, which is much more business oriented in terms of executing facility rentals as well as strong private-public partnerships. So from the expectations of the community, we wanted to make sure that it was high-quality facilities. We wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to expand fitness, arts, cultural programming. We needed to make sure that it was safe and professionally managed. As Derek said, need to be responsible. It's a $65 million community asset. So stewardship and being responsible for that operation is pretty much key. And then, of course, doing it within an effective, efficient, fiscally disciplined way. Operational assumptions. Projected operational hours. Again, this very much mirrors or is close to the old facility. The difference here is that we're not projecting to be open on Sundays. That this would be much more of an opportunity to lean into more community events and or rentals associated with that space. In terms of the operating model, you kind of got a 3-in-1 or almost like a 4-in-1. So you have this library model where you walk in, you have gathering spaces. Nobody's really asking you to pay to access certain spaces. So it's kind of that free access. You've got program spaces. Then you have the private-public partnership operations with the Ceramics Early Education Cafe. And then, of course, then you have the Lagoon Event Hall and a kitchen, which really is, I don't want to say it's an enterprise kind of focused operation, but it definitely is very revenue generated. And so from a staffing level projection, we're looking at about 11.27 FTEs. Only 2 of the positions identified here are identified as new positions. Both of them are really around the event hall and the management and operations of that, which is going to feel like it's an operation in and of itself. What you see here then is the existing staff, and a lot of this is a matter of, pulling people back into the operations of the facility that were a part of it previously. But what you don't see is you don't see a ton of the full-time staff being completely dedicated to the operations of this space and or the programs and services. So really what you see is just a number of full-time employees and part-time employees that are fully dedicated to just the operation of this facility. And a lot of that is around part-time customer service, around supervision, and around the rental of the facility. In terms of the facility, we have to recognize that it's a community center. It's a recreation center, it's a community center. But because of that, you have school year and you have summer. And facilities get used in very, very, very different ways. When kids are in school, you have a very different operating model Monday through Friday from 8 to 3. Evenings are different, weekends are different. When you get to summer, you have that opportunity to start to incorporate more youth programming during the day. So that could be the opportunity for such things as the event halls or certain spaces within the event hall being utilized for camps, extending youth programs upstairs. But the key here is to ensure that the programming that's offered to the seniors, August, September through May, is consistent through the summer as well. We do not want to displace that programming and service. So their home and their spaces are consistent 12 months a year. In terms of the private-public partnerships, we're looking at an RFI request, so a request for interest. A little bit different than an RFP, but at the end of the day, what you're looking for is to ensure that there is interest out there. It's kind of a combined opportunity to leverage expert operators around those 3 fundamental subject matter expertise areas, expand services without increasing city operations, and reduce that risk and complexity of operations. Ceramics different, cafe is different, early education's different, and we feel like there is definitely a market out there to lean into that as well. In terms of what the setup would look like, again, what we applied was some of our best practice understandings of how this would apply. Does not mean that these might vary from space to space, and what I'm referring to is what those compensation packages look like. So it could be base rent plus percentage of gross revenue, could be a straight up just base rent only, could be just gross revenue. So what we've done is applied all 3 of those scenarios. At the end of the day, the RFI process will in turn help to define what is best for the other side of the table. The private partner is going to have a say in terms of how that works out for you all. In terms of the Lagoon Event Hall, again, I've referenced this a couple of times. This is going to feel like an operation within an operation. Customer service and the responsiveness to the inquiries is going to be fundamental to the success. If we don't respond to people, we don't get back to them, we don't have conversations about what they're looking for and what the facility can accommodate, even if it's just the simple who, what, where, when, how, why, being able to answer those questions, it's going to be very, very critical to the success of that space. Making sure that this feels like it is a space within the space. Making sure that understanding of what the policies, the pricing, the workflow, and even branding of that space as a space that can be used not just by a community member that's looking for a 50th birthday party, but a large event such as a wedding reception and or potential wedding and wedding reception. ensuring that you have that dedicated rental coordination staff, ensuring that you have strong custodial and setup crews, making sure that you limit the number of people that actually can use the kitchen. That's going to be a full-blown kitchen, and it will have very specialized equipment. It's not like somebody's home kitchen. So ensuring that you understand the risk associated with the caterers that are using that, but also to ensure that you have strong, credible caterers that are going to deliver as part of your package. And then, of course, that customer service. End of the day, anything in this plan, you all are going to have to approve separately as part of the overall pricing policy and a fee structure. Again, we utilized a lot of best practice benchmarks as to apply to the numbers that we are about to get into. So this is what the former FCC operating budget looked like. The last year of operations had a $2.3 million deficit, and the annual cost recovery was about 22%. One thing just to kind of point out that is going to be fundamentally different here is that the programs in this scenario include about $97,000 of ceramic revenue. It also then includes an offset or an expenditure of about $40,000 or $50,000. So the net take on just the ceramics program was about $50,000. Just want to make sure that that's clear because that is something that will come up later in the presentation. In terms of the overall revenue summary, in terms of what we're projecting for the first full year of operation, which we're not expecting to be July 1st of 2027, we're looking at about $2.1 million, and about 58% of that revenue is from the Lagoon Event Hall. Now, again, this is giving you a ramp-up period of basically between now and the time that we're making these projections, about an 18-month ramp-up period. So a certain amount of time, obviously, leading up to the opening of the facility when people start to use it, and then we're looking at a good another 9 months to operate to really kind of get their feet underneath them in terms of really understanding the cadence of use, the cadence of customer inquiries, the cadence of revenue. We do propose a different rate structure. We're looking at resident, nonprofits, and commercial as a framework for what fees people would charge. Again, that would be something that would have to be incorporated into a new pricing policy. And then, of course, you have configuration-based fees. What do you charge weekday versus what do you charge full day? What do you charge weekend? And other charges such as security, kitchen, or terrace would be kind of add-ons as well. So the best way to look at this is that it's a dynamic pricing structure associated with the Lagoon Event Hall that's very different than what you would charge to get a picnic shelter in a park or a pickleball court. That's a lot more straightforward. This is geared towards true revenue generation with the understanding that we're not looking for this space to offset its cost 100%, nor the entire facility. So that expenditure summary is about $3.7 million. Of which, about 1.4 is personnel and another 1.6 is around service and charges. We do have about $204,000 of pass-through charges, which are really tied to third-party security for after-hour events. In terms of the overall 6-year projected pro forma, of course, kicking in on July 1st of 2027, we're looking at about an annual general fund subsidy of about $1.6 million, cost recovery of about 57%. At the end of the day, nobody really cares about cost recovery percentage because what you care about is the amount of general fund subsidy that is going to go towards the operation of the facility. You don't approve a budget based on cost recovery, you approve it based on numbers. So just a couple of key here is that we're looking at revenue to be a driver of about $1.4 million additional over what the old FCC did. That includes a significant increase in the lagoon room rentals. That is, a significant jump, about $1 million more than what the last facility operated. In terms of the overall expenditures, Obviously, staff increase of about $428,000, and you have those pass-through charges. Key here is to recognize that we are looking at a net decrease in the general fund subsidy of about $733,000. The cost recovery percentage, as I said, is about 57%. Any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions? That's a lot of detail in a short period of time.
Who's ready? Patrick?
Yeah, thank you very much for your report detail, and I'm going to refer to page 188, and on the financing question, part of your analysis in the bottom was mentioning that we need a rental coordinator. When I look at the lagoon rentals and the projection that you have here from the prior year was $139,000, and then you're projected for 27-28 is $1,218,000. That's a 775% increase.
Correct.
And then when I go below, when I look at private-public, which we show from that same date, 23,000, we go to 282,000. That's over 1,000% return on it. So I really am excited. I would really hire you for economic development manager for the city, but that's so broad.
It is.
Without some foundation, unless I'm hearing from when I'm reading your information that we really will need a rental coordinator, because the bulk of the revenue that you're talking, the square footage of the new facility is not going to be that much greater than the existing one, the prior one. So I'm having a hard time from a business perspective that I think your projections are off the charts.
Understood. There's an entire behind-the-scenes market analysis that we did in terms of what your opportunities are for that facility. We also compared it very similarly to the Agora Hills, which is in or near Calabasas. They have a very similar public facility that they operate as well. And then we also compared pricing. It's not going to magically happen. It is why we are proposing a full-time rental coordinator and support staff for that individual. But this is not going to be something in which you can just wait for people to come to you. It is going to have to run it like it's a business. And once you do that and you establish the brand, you establish the customer service, you establish the cleanliness, you already have a wonderfully built-in site. You do have an opportunity to generate a lot of business. As we said, we're looking at, you have an opportunity not to rent the entire space 260 times a year, but you could rent it 260 times a year. When you think about it, it's a 4-in-1. So there's opportunities to rent 2 spaces or 3 spaces simultaneously based on how that facility is set up.
Right. I would be more impressed if you had some areas, surrounding areas, because we are in competition, whether it's a wedding reception or it's a bar mitzvah or whatever it may be. People are price conscious. So I'm really trying to grab a hold of the projections because they just seem unrealistic.
We do have a separate market analysis that we can share with you that understands kind of where your pricing is today versus some of those competitors. So we do have that we are willing to share, but that was a helpful understanding of how it drove where our price points ended up.
Because if we don't reach those 3 areas, which those 3 areas that you project, 775% rate of return, 1,000%, that's probably 70 to 75% of the projected revenue that would come in.
Correct. Yep. And
so it is scary.
It is. It is definitely scary. I will say the RFI is going to be directly within your hands of assuming that you get a strong response in terms of the market associated with that. The negotiations that you have that will lock in those specific contracts will in turn inform that $282,000. Could be more, could be less.
So the last question, we have 9.7 full staff, and your comment is that we need 11.7. Do you think we can accomplish what you're talking about with the new staff?
You will need to very much focus on the fact that it is a 40,000 square foot facility. So it's, as you said, it's not a significantly larger operation. It's a very different operation in the sense that you have the business within the business of that event hall, but then you also are looking to privatize 3 of those operations spaces within there to subject matter experts, in which you're not in turn directly responsible for programming those 3 spaces or operating those 3 spaces. So that takes some square footage out of play as well, but also puts you in a position of just managing contracts as opposed to managing soup to nuts regarding those 3 specific operations.
That's why you talked about a rental coordinator.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Phoebe, do you have questions?
Yeah, thank you.
bunch.
There are more comments. Should I save them?
Yeah, okay, hold it. Okay, questions? Susie, question? Yeah, I've got a couple, and it was pretty much on a similar subject of Patrick, and that's, yeah, I know this is going to be subsidized. That's a given. It's just a matter of how much. Is there any plan to how this increased revenue is going to get marketed? How are we going to market it?
How it's going to get marketed?
Yeah, where are we going to draw the clientele?
Well, I think that is an understanding of, that goes back to that market analysis that we did, and understanding that just, I believe, within a 12 or 15-minute drive, the service area population explodes, but also the demographic still kind of remains relatively consistent in a way of being able to afford those price points. But I am more than happy to provide the full market analysis to this, that in turn would help support some of those specific questions that are not a part of the actual report right now.
I, for one, would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to sit there and go, well, if we build it, they will come. I don't want to create that kind of a scenario. That's pretty much on the. Oh, there's one more. Yes, there is. I seem to recall that the cafe was on the left, and now it's on the right. Is that correct?
I know it's between and behind the front desk. I can pull it back up here. Forget that I had it on here. My apologies.
It's okay.
Clicky click.
It's to the left of the stairwell as you look at it.
Correct. So it is right behind the front desk. And
I thought it was, when we originally were looking at that, the large green arrow that you have there was right next to that. Was
that
the cafe.
could be the case, but I don't know. This was the plan that I
Are we
was
looking,
given.
I'm sorry.
No, all right. Well, I'm throwing the question out, and I'm not necessarily pointing at you to answer it either.
That's the original location of the cafe.
What is?
That's the original location.
This?
I think the cafe has grown a little bit from the previous.
I'm going to do some digging,
but
because
yeah.
I don't believe that. I just remember it was.
Unless you're looking at a 2016 rendering.
No.
This is what
one.
we were
Okay,
proposing.
any rate. And my other question is more for staff, and this is, given what we're doing today to encompass the 2 years that the rec center is down, if you will, okay, what kind of burden has it put on the vibe and the wind room and the like? And what's going to happen with those once the rec centers, or the community center is finished? Has any thought been given to that?
Thank you for your question, Mayor Kiesel. Staff, that's going to be part of staff's transition phase, just as we had to develop a phase to transition to temporary facilities. We're also looking at how that current impacts the facilities and how are we going to transition with that. What we have learned from this experience is that we can utilize the vibe a lot more than it previously was used when it was only simply a teen center. And so the opportunity to treat it more as a community center and not specifically geared towards just youth. And so we looked at and found some opportunities with that. Obviously, the major thing is our facilities are quite worn. Both our community center annex as well as the Vibe, has taken a lot of pressure on those facilities with all the number of people and so forth. So obviously, we're going to be looking at transitioning, looking at some maintenance and so forth that we're going to need. But really, we're looking at it as an opportunity to those facilities and spaces will continue to complement the overall operation and services. Very much going to be utilizing, which is why we changed the name to the Community Center Annex, because it will be an extension of the new Community Center, Foster City Community Center. It'll be a great opportunity for programs, for instance, that are community spaces for those groups, community groups looking for less costly options. So that will give us some options for spaces there, but also looking at ways that we can expand programming in the Vibe, since we've learned a lot from this past year or so. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, excellent, thank you. I just didn't want that to fall by the wayside, plus what we've learned from the experience. Okay, those are my questions. Any others pop up? Okay, no, we got public comment first.
We do not have public comment.
That's it? None?
None.
None? Lack of interest? Phoebe, go ahead.
Thank you, Michael, for the very detailed report. I really love the concept of the business within the business, our space within the space. The role you're talking about, the person who's going to be responsible for, it's a coordinator role? Is that the title?
It is right now labeled as a rental coordinator, correct?
Okay. I would love to see, it will depend what we pay this person. We don't have to discuss that tonight. But because to me, when you describe it, it sounds like this person's responsible for a lot of inbound sales as well as outbound sales.
Yes.
So they kind of have to have that sales mentality. We wouldn't want them to just be sitting there waiting for things to come in and say, well, couldn't get anything for the next couple months. Like, go out there and pound the pavement. So I just wanted to understand your thoughts around that. And is that something you see that's more on trend now with these kinds of newer community centers where you have someone that really is a salesperson?
Yes, you need somebody that understands the business side of this. We've all, seen movies, documentaries, whatever it might be around like wedding planners and so on and so forth. There are opportunities in which this person is going to have to work with somebody's wedding planner. Is going to have to work with somebody's mother-in-law or mother. And so it's going to really understand the balance between the customer service approach as well as the business side. It's going to take a very special person and or support staff to be able to leverage that facility. The best way I can, you said it, the best way I could say this is this has to take on an identity all in and of itself in order for it to work. The way it's been designed, the appointments associated with it, the furniture associated with it, the layout, the fact that you have 2 kitchens, the fact that you have storage, that the way that works is it just has to have its own identity. It can't be, we have this event hall at the Foster City Community Center. It has to kind of stand on its own as its own set of branding. And that person is going to have to be a professional that really understands that operation.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I know we're not getting into the job description or anything tonight, but this person has to be like super hungry for the business. Like they're going to wake up every day thinking like how they're going to land that business. And that being said, they will probably need a little bit of autonomy, like if they want to do things like have an open house, invite corporations or startups in to take a look at the space. Because if you just tell them there's a space, they'll say, I don't care, right? But show them how beautiful that space is. So that's just probably a little farther out there, but something to think about, that they'll need a little bit of flexibility there.
It's true, and even one of the things that you might consider as you're looking to sell the space is that maybe it's space A or it's space B that's right now set up all the time. It's set up in a configuration that feels like you can show it off. You're not showing off a blank room and then pictures, but also it feeds right off of the terrace, so people will be able to look in as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Patrick?
Thanks, Phoebe, for kind of leading into some of the things that I would be interested in finding. with your projection of all this, do we have, because the success of any of these rentals is being able to have, whether it's the internet or having the equipment, whether it's stereo or whatever it is. So I'm assuming your assumption is that we have all this extra perks that people are going to want to rent that space because it has the stage or it has the sound system. Is that incorporated in your thought
It
process?
is my understanding that you have a strong, technology component, digital component, audio component with this facility, that it will be able to run the gamut from somebody's baby shower to somebody's wedding reception to somebody's corporate meeting.
So in the thought process, we almost would sound like you'd have a commissioned person here because they're motivated to make sure those spaces are booked there, or do you work on a bonus? And that's, again, not for you.
I think that's a conversation for you all. It's the balance between, how you pay everybody else in the city and so on and so forth. So we weren't trying to break new ground with regards to compensation packages. As part of this, we stayed consistent with the government, local government approach to salary compensation packages.
Good? Okay. Comment? Stacy?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think we have a real opportunity here. I do, and thank you very much for answering all my questions in the report. So I'm going to repeat my sense of what I was trying to get at in my questions, is that as we move forward, I think we need to be cautious in, these numbers are great, I'm not questioning your numbers, but it's going to depend on what actually happens. So I want to be cautious in going forward in budgeting. This is for fiscal years 27-28, but we have a 26-27 coming up, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So I just want to, that's where I'm coming from, is being cautious in this next year with how we budget it. I also, in moving forward, and this is one of my comments as well, would like to understand better, specifically for the public-private partnerships, what the costs are for the city when we go into these agreements. So whether it's a base rent plus percentage or whatever it is, I would like to understand what the costs of the city are to maintain that, let's say it's the cafe, to maintain the cafe. What are the electrical costs? What are the other things that the city is going to have to maintain in that, so that we have a full picture of what the return is for those operations. So anyway, I think we have a really good opportunity here. And thank you for all the information in the report.
Yeah, I want to just thank you finally for a pro forma, Derek. Please smile. Yeah, you're doing a good job smiling. I appreciate that. No, and I think it's done very well. This is actually more than I expected at this particular time. I was just looking for numbers and how we're going to finance and all that kind of stuff. But I appreciate all the detail that you presented in the attachments and your comments about it is a business. It's a whole different mindset than government. Well, you're recovering Park and Rec?
I am a recovering Parks and
What are
Rec
you
director, and I
recovering
actually
from,
had
Park
a
and Rec?
facility. I actually did have a facility, a 7,500 square foot event center as part of a rec center. So,
just out of curiosity, yeah. So, yeah, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing. And I'm just going to go on the record and make them sure that this is not going to pay for itself. It's going to be subsidized. That's a given. Period. It's called a community center, and it's meant for who? The community. So it's going to be that subsidy is going to be community benefit. So I just want to make sure that that's loud and clear. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to are we adopting a resolution? Adopt the resolution for the plan, for the Community Center Business Operations Plan.
I'll second.
I have a motion, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next item.
Item 9.2, consideration of revising salary ranges for various management positions in Public Works, approving a revised job description title for the building fleet maintenance superintendent, and adopting the amended pay plan for fiscal year 2025-2026. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Kiesel and members of the council. I'm Diane Pittman, Administrative Services Director, and I am here to present item 9.2, which Katie just described very well, so I won't repeat it. I'll get into the details of the report. These recommendations are being made as the final action from the 2023 Classification Compensation Study. So when that study was implemented, it implemented changes based on market analysis. Internal equity and compaction should also have been considered. And after getting to know the level of responsibilities, skills, knowledge, and consequence of error for the various management positions, internal equity adjustments are recommended so that similar jobs are paid with similar salaries. This includes even a reduction of the salary of the building fleet maintenance position, which is currently vacant, and changing the title, which requires City Council approval. The specific salary changes are outlined in the staff report. But in addition, best practice is to ensure a 15% differential between a manager and their direct reports to compensate for the additional responsibility and to encourage future growth and promotion. Based on the change in salary to the Public Works Maintenance Superintendent, an increase to the Public Works Maintenance Manager is necessary to get to that 15% differential. These adjustments are detailed in the staff report, but they do not require an additional appropriation. Retroactive payments are recommended to July 1st, 2025, and can be absorbed in the current budget. And of course, these salary changes will be budgeted for in future fiscal years. And then moving forward, jobs will be evaluated semi-regularly to ensure our salaries remain competitive for recruitment and retention purposes. And if there's any necessary changes, they will be brought back to the City Council for approval. And then finally, any addition or revision to a job description or salary requires an amended pay plan to be approved by the council to comply with CalPERS regulations. So an updated pay plan, including these recommended changes, is included with the staff report. And that concludes my report, and we are available to answer any questions.
Questions? No? Susie, I'll ask you. No? Questions? None? Public?
No public comment.
Okay, comments?
I'll just say I really appreciate all the work that you've done on this study. I think it's so important that we pay our employees appropriately, and by taking the initiative to really dig deep and make sure that we're, paying fairly and accurately and kind of in line with our, other cities across the county, it sends a message to the employees that we value them. So thank you.
Any others? Okay, looking for a motion.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the revised job description title for building fleet maintenance superintendent and adopting the amended pay plan for fiscal year 25-26. Did I miss anything?
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next item.
Item 10, Communications. 10.1, City District Warrants of Demand were processed and issued on January 29, 2026. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please provide a speaker slip or raise your hand on Zoom. This is an information item only. No action is required.
Next item.
Item 11, City District Manager Reports, Council Board Statements and Requests, and Council Liaison Reports.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, just one quick report out of our City Council retreat last week. Direction was given to disband the Audit Committee. So that action will be coming in a future City Council meeting. I'm trying to remember if it's the one in 2 weeks or if it's the mid-March one, but that is coming. Also, we have a CSAC member vacancy that needs to be filled. we have advertised but held off on bringing that candidate before the city council until after the city council retreat, so that we could make sure that that was still going to be valid. And since it is, again, we only have one vacancy, and we've only received one applicant, and I believe it's the youth applicant. Because we only have one applicant, what my plan is, and because we can't get into a back and forth discussion on this since it's non-agendized, is to simply dispense with the council's new policy to hold a special meeting to interview candidates. Rather than holding a special meeting, we're going to go ahead, since there's only one candidate and one vacancy, we'll go ahead and put that on the council's agenda for the regular meeting to be appointed. And the plan is to put it on the consent. So what I would ask is, if the council has a different idea, come talk to me one-on-one as appropriate, and I can certainly change that. But that's my intention at this point. I'm just notifying you. If you want me to do something different with that, come talk to me individually afterwards, and I'm happy to do it the way you want.
That's clear, I think. Okay.
I don't know if that was clear, but I tried to be
It was clear to me.
Okay.
Clear to you, Patrick?
Yeah, it was very clear to me.
All right.
Of course, if we have any objection, we can always object later.
Yes. Okay.
It was less clear to me, but I'm glad it was clear to you. So.
Phoebe, you want to make your comments?
Close it out. As I mentioned before, Happy Lunar New Year, Xinyan Kuaila, Gongxi Fatsai. Forgive my Chinese, it's still work in progress. And also a happy Ramadan. This is very special that these two holidays, which are very different, are beginning on the same day. But it's all about family celebrations. In terms of what I've been up to the last time since we spoke, I attended the CSAC committee meeting as their liaison. They voted in a new chair and vice chair, so congratulations to John Estalila as their new chair. Thank you to outgoing chair Shipli Goel. New vice chair is Catherine Beglinger, and the previous vice chair, thank you, is Naisa Mitra. They also discussed some Earth Day brainstorming and priorities discussions, so we'll probably see or hear more as they cement some of those ideas. I also attended the recent Youth Advisory Committee meeting. They were continuing to discuss their spring philanthropy event, which is going to be kind of like an open house in the vibe, where they're going to try to get different organizations, nonprofits and such, to come out to kind of pitch their wares to youth who might want to volunteer with them. So they're doing their outreach right now to those organizations. I sit on the commute.org board and also on their strategic plan subcommittee. So we had a subcommittee meeting, and that was just to give the staff of commute.org initial feedback on their revised mission statement, vision statement, and those kinds of higher arching things. So that's what I have for today. Thank you.
Okay. Patrick.
Nothing to report. I was on vacation for around 6 days in Florida. The weather wasn't as nice as I expected to be, but I had a good time with the relatives, and Mickey Mouse and the Epcot Center is still there.
Stacy.
The only meeting that I had the last 2 weeks was CCAG, and at that meeting we talked about an upcoming round of funding that's going to be available. So I'm hoping that staff is keeping their eyes and ears out. OBAG 4 will be kicking off soon. What is different this year is that they've reworked some of the scoring for projects that come in. Typically, Foster City has not been eligible for these projects because we do not necessarily have what they call areas of interest, or like low-income areas, for example, and we're not near transit centers. And so that makes it very difficult for us to get any of these funding for these projects. But they have now given us an additional point score for actually not having these things. It's a little complicated, but basically it means that we are, I think, now more eligible than we have been in the past. So staff, please think about projects that we could submit. Projects could be for planning and capital projects. We can use it for our bike and pedestrian plans and funding for that. So things like education, restriping, all of those things. So hopefully we can at least try to get some of that funding. And I was also honored to be nominated as the vice chair. So that will be happening hopefully next month. And I will get to serve on the committee in that capacity, which will be great. And then in March, just a heads up, I will be in Sacramento, actually, as part of my role as chair of the legislative committee, which will be great because I will be meeting with all different kinds of legislative officials, and while I'll be representing them as a, kind of a county capacity, I always do carry my Foster City hat as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So that ends my report. Thank you. And happy Lunar New Year and Ash Wednesday and, Ramadan, all of the things.
Stacy?
Thank you.
Or Susie,
Yeah.
excuse me.
So we had a SFO roundtable meeting on the 4th. I wanted to let everybody know there's going to be some repaving of some runways. So there's going to be some things going on. Runways 1L and 1R, which are takeoff runways, will be closed from March to October to repave. They tell us there's going to be no impact to Foster City because the runways that Foster City uses for landing, or not Foster City, but affect Foster City, are 28L and R, and those aren't going to be impacted. But I want to also let everybody know there might be some traffic impacts near the airport due to construction activity, because they're going to have work hours are going to be Monday through Saturday, and it's going to be day and night. Planning Commission on the 5th held a study session number 2 for Gilead's Chess Hatch project, and they had their first Board of Appeals training. Mayor Kiesel and I attended a local officials briefing on the 12th, and that was with the county and other council members from the county, reviewed the VLF shortfall, the need to work together to resolve that issue, and what I heard Mike Callaghy say was they're going to be coming up with some strategies over the next 2 weeks. They also reviewed the impacts of HR 1 on the county's safety net services, which does not look good. And then DA Steve Wagstaff presented, he's been tasked with eradicating human trafficking in San Mateo County, and yes, there is human trafficking. It's a real thing. And he provided an update on the county's road to, not him, but they also provided an update on the county's road to functional zero homelessness. So all that was talked about during the briefing.
And I must comment on copious note-taking. After the meeting, I talked to Noelia Corzo, and because the meeting because of the Brown Act restrictions, only 2 council members could attend. But I tried to explore with her the ability to maybe produce something on Zoom where all the council members can participate or listen, at least listen without violating the Brown Act. Maybe we run the questions through the city managers, okay? Something to that nature, because there's 2 of us, which is 40% of our council, but the other 60% of the city councils countywide have no idea what was said or what was discussed. And I think that needs to be shared. So put more burden on the city manager. With that, meeting adjourned.